Hello there, welcome to the Saroy channel and welcome to my Omnibus series. I've got so many of these omnibuses that are going to come out so that you'll be able to listen to an hour's worth of stories, which I know you're going to love. You know, the thing is that telling stories is such a fine art, and it's something that was practiced hundreds of years ago when people didn't have the technology that we have today. And everyone would gather around the fire and listen to a wonderful story. And also, what is so wonderful about a story is that personally, I think it is the best way to go to sleep. Every night when I go to bed, I always listen to stories. And that's something that parents used to do with their children. It's something that they still do with their children. There's nothing better than a good story. And so I hope you're going to enjoy this series. And before we start, I just want to say, do subscribe to my channel because you don't want to miss out on anything. Because I'm in for the long haul and I want to make sure that you get the most stunning stories to go to bed with at night or to listen to when you want to be one of those people sitting beside the fire and listening. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and let's get started. I hope you're going to enjoy the omnibus.
Dear Sarah, and all your lovely listeners, I'm not sure it's a good idea, Justin. In fact, if the truth be told, it's a very bad idea. I had said this for what must have been the zillionth time, after he suggested we move in with his mother for a while. Was he being for real? Surely not. I thought for a second that he had to be pulling my leg, and in any given moment he'd give me a huge cheesy grin and say, "I had you going there for a moment, didn't I?" I would slap him on the back teasingly and say, "How could you do that? That was a cruel joke. And yes, you had me going for a second. I almost believed you." We would laugh together about it afterwards, but I could see by the solemn expression on Justin's very handsome, perfectly symmetrical face that he was being deadly serious, and for a moment my heart did a double jolt in my chest. I could feel my stomach lurching. I couldn't believe for the life of me that Justin would give such a preposterous, nonsensical idea any airtime or consideration. Did he have a death wish for our marriage or something, and wanted it to spontaneously combust like some chemicals you put together in a science experiment? I knew I had a battle on my hands, as I could sense that Justin rarely believed he'd found the perfect solution to knock out all our short-term problems. But sometimes the solution can bring forth its own set of issues. I knew moving in with his capricious, difficult mother would be a monumental mistake that could potentially have catastrophic consequences on our marriage. Justin was not easily put off by the beleaguered expression on my face. Practicality appeared to be his second name. "Look at the apartments we've seen on the internet," he said resolutely. "They've been incredibly disappointing. The ones we like are well above our price range. If we rented one of those out, we would be living on spam and baked beans for months on end, and I don't like the thought of that. But if we rented one of those tiny little one-room apartments, there'd barely be enough room for us to swing a cat. And I don't know about you, but I absolutely abhor living in a confined, cramped space." "But we can make it work. Other people have done so can we," I insisted. "You should see how some people live in Hong Kong. I went there a short while ago. Some of them live in these high-rise apartments with about enough space for a tiny closet. If they can do it, so can we. We'll have to bite the bullet a little for the time being. But we are not moving in with your mother. Not over my dead body. I'm sorry, Justin, but we're not," I said determinedly, my voice beginning to crack in earnest. "But don't you see, it's a salient decision. It makes absolute sense as far as I'm concerned," said Justin. "I've got a job transfer to Oregon. My work is not far from where my mother lives. If we move in with her, life will be a whole lot easier for the both of us. It'll only be for a short while, until we get back on our feet again. My mother will never accept any rent or food money from us. She will love to have us around, and we can make some real savings on that score." I drew in a deep breath to steady my nerves. I did not like where this conversation was heading, and furthermore I knew exactly how persuasive Justin could be. He had this remarkable way of always getting his own way, while making you believe it was your idea all along. Ostensibly, no recently married woman wants to learn that they might be moving in with their mother-in-law, and having this annoying third party always getting under your feet and potentially cramping your style. It's not exactly an auspicious start to any marriage, especially when you're living on their turf and always feeling beholden to them. The worst part of it all was I'd never met Jackie Bourdain before, but I'd heard enough about her to make me seriously reticent about living with such an opinionated, toffee-nosed woman who wasn't remotely afraid to express her feelings very brazenly, it would seem. There was no way we could live with Jackie Bourdain, even for a short while, I thought. It wouldn't be a good start. If anyone were to write a manual on how to have a happy marriage, moving in with your mother-in-law would not be on the advice sheet. It would seem my indignant protests fell on deaf ears as far as Justin was concerned. When he had his mind set on something, he could be mulishly stubborn, and persuading him to change his mind was an exhausting business that right now was too overwhelming for me to tackle or undertake. It was simply easier not to say anything at all. We were only beginning our journey into married life, and I didn't want to start this intrepid adventure by bickering or disagreeing with him. We had enjoyed a whirlwind romance, after meeting by chance in a coffee shop of all places, where Justin was supposed to meet up with a date online, that never showed up. He was told he'd recognise the woman at once. She would be wearing her signature red scarf. "You can't miss me. I'll be wearing a bright red scarf. Then you'll know I'm your date." I had bizarrely entered the coffee shop, wearing a bright red scarf, with absolutely no idea that Justin was watching out for a woman fitting that description. I'd only put the scarf on that morning because I couldn't find the practical grey one I normally wore. Justin came up to me and said, "You must be Katrina. Your photograph, well, it was a bit blurry, but it doesn't do you justice." "Sorry, I don't know what you're talking about. My name's not Katrina. You've got the wrong person, I'm afraid." Justin looked perplexed, 2 lines crinkled between his brow. "But you told me online that I would recognise you by the red scarf you were wearing." "I'm sorry, but you've got the wrong person." I did sound a bit peeved, I will admit. So I said rather sarcastically, "Well, it's a free world, isn't it? If I want to wear a red scarf, I can. So can anybody else, for that matter." Justin didn't seem aggrieved by my affronted reaction. "You're right about that. Anyone can wear a red scarf. What a dreadful pity," he had said. "I had hoped you were my date. When I saw you, I thought I had hit the jackpot. It seems I'm not having a very good day after all. My date has failed to show up. But it could get a lot better if you allowed me to buy you a coffee instead. How about it?" Justin looked at me, with hope in his eyes, like a pleading puppy dog watching you eating a piece of steak, and hoping with all his heart you might just throw him a scrap. I almost felt bad for the man, because with his puppy dog-like eyes, how could I refuse him? So I nonchalantly said, "How do you know your date isn't going to show up? Maybe she's late." "Because I've been standing here like a lemon for 3/4 of an hour, drinking coffee on my own." "But I suspect she could be late," I said. "Some people are." "No one is this late," said Justin. "The woman's clearly stood me up. She's not going to show. But it's not a train smash, because if the truth be told, I would so much rather have coffee with you. So please agree to have some coffee with me. You will make me a very happy man." My heart warmed up to this handsome-looking stranger, who looked as if he was a lacrosse player. He was so well built. But it wasn't his physical appearance that actually drew me in. It was his warm, engaging personality, and the way the corners of his lips twitched upwards into a cheeky grin that rather reminded me of a naughty schoolboy. I noticed that Justin had such wholesome, innocent eyes that looked like he was incapable of deception. I sensed his integrity from the very start. And trust me, integrity has always been a big issue in relationships for me. The gods must have been smiling down on me, on this cheery winter's morning. Thankfully, no other woman entered the coffee shop, especially one wearing a red scarf. So Justin grinned at me cheekily and said, "See, it was serendipity. What did I tell you? I was meant to meet someone wearing a red scarf this morning, and here you are, delivered by the gods themselves. This is my lucky date." It would seem our coffee turned into lunch, and thereafter into dinner, and in the weeks that followed, me and Justin became completely inseparable. When I met Justin, I couldn't believe he'd actually been on a dating site. He was the kind of man that would likely have women swooning all over him, so his interest in me was really rather surprising. To look at, let's just say that Justin had a Tom Cruise look about him. Well, when Tom was in his prime, that is. Only he was a lot better looking than Tom. I, on the other hand, did not consider myself to be what you would describe a head-turner, well, a traditional one at that. I had the terribly ordinary, pretty nondescript girl next door type of looks. Brown bobbed hair that tumbled to my shoulders, brown eyes, and nothing about me that I considered exceptional in any way, apart from the angel wings tattoo that I had between my shoulder blades, that I'd got done in my early teens, when I went through a stage where I was absolutely fascinated by angels. I'd always thought my tattoo was pretty cool, although my mother had warned me that when I got older, I'd seriously regret having it done. According to Justin, I was the most beautiful woman he'd ever met, and that was good enough for me. It just goes to show that beauty really is in the eye of the beholder. Before I knew it, I'd been swept off my feet and fallen hard for Justin Bourdain, and I couldn't imagine my life without him. The relationship had been dizzyingly fun, romantic and exciting, so much so that I hadn't stopped to think about any practicalities along the way concerning our relationship long term. Let's just say when you're in the honeymoon stage of any relationship, you don't think very sensibly about anything at all. You're pretty much like an autumn leaf that has fallen into a boisterous stream, and you just go with a tempestuous flow wherever the current takes you, never once even questioning the journey. It was after 6 months of living together in Dustin's apartment that we shared with a couple of friends who welcomed me into the tiny flat, that Justin popped the question to me, in the most unlikely of places, but then again, I wouldn't expect Justin to do anything the traditional way. At the time, I was on a roller coaster at the fairground, would you believe it, where we'd enjoyed candy floss, pretzels and corn dogs together. Justin had shouted to me at the top of his lungs as the roller coaster went whirling around and around and around in a wild, frantic spin, with people screaming out at the top of their lungs in a thrilled explosion of fear, peppered with exhilarated excitement. I had never been on a roller coaster ride before, and never tempted to go on one either. Justin insisted I went on my own, without him at my side, which I thought was odd at the time. "Go on," he encouraged. "You've never been on a roller coaster ride before, have you, June?" "No, I haven't, and I don't want to go now either." "Go on. You need to experience the thrill on your own, at least once in a lifetime. If you don't do it for yourself, June, do it for me. Embrace your fear. That's what I say. You never know, you might actually get to enjoy yourself." "All right, I'll do it for you," I said hesitantly, armed with a huge measure of reluctance, but I didn't want to be a complete wuss. "You need to face your fear, June, and do it anyway, so I'm very proud of you. Don't worry about anything. I'll be here on the ground, cheering you all the way." I'd always been the kind of person to avoid taking risks, and going on a roller coaster ride was no exception to that rule. But Justin had masterfully persuaded me to do so. I was screaming with terror as the roller coaster went whirling around and around amidst my screams. That was when I heard another voice. It was Justin's. I could hear his voice crying out to me. He was calling me. "June Gregor! June Gregor!" I almost stopped screaming. I wondered what the hell Justin could want with me while I'm on a roller coaster of all things. Was my skirt hanging out awkwardly of the railing or something? Why was he so desperately trying to get my attention? For a moment Justin's voice made me forget my fear, as I tried to listen to what he was saying. Then I heard the words rising above the whooshing sound of the roller coaster and the screams of all the riders. "June Gregor! June Gregor! Will you marry me? June Gregor! Will you marry me? I love you, June Gregor! Please say yes!" Are you kidding me? Justin Bourdain was asking me to marry him, while my adrenaline was spiking to new levels, and while I was whirling around at the speed of light on this roller coaster. I mean, I just couldn't believe he was doing this. My skin flushed a bright pink colour, and I climbed off the roller coaster, bolting towards him rather awkwardly, my body shaking from the thrilled exhilaration of the rather rattling experience, which I knew I would never do again, because I had felt like a jelly bean that had been rattled around in a container. Justin was grinning at me with that cheeky schoolboy look. "Well, have you got an answer for me yet?" I pretended I didn't have a clue what he was talking about. "What are you talking about, Justin? What are you saying exactly?" "Didn't you hear me calling out to you when you were on the roller coaster?" "You were calling out to me," I said, feigning surprise. "I only heard my thunderous heartbeat and my screams," I lied. Justin promptly got onto his knees and proposed to me, presenting me with a navy blue velvet box containing a beautiful emerald and diamond engagement ring, which he opened up and presented to me. "Will you marry me, June Gregor?" he said breathlessly. "Will you marry me? Please say yes. Don't keep me in any more suspense, or I'll pull my hair out." I threw my hand over my mouth in traditional style and gasped. My heart was now literally doing somersaults. This was real. I had rarely fallen hard for Justin, and this beautiful, beautiful man I couldn't envisage living without was asking me to marry him. I couldn't believe that all my dreams had come true. "Yes! Yes! I'll marry you!" We literally hugged each other, holding each other for a long while. All the bystanders began to clap and cheer with delight. One man, who literally looked like he was 9 months pregnant, called out, "Love, did you not hear this man proposing to you while you were whirling around on the roller coaster? It's a novel way to propose to a woman. You're not going to forget that one in a hurry. And to think I proposed to my missus at a boring old restaurant. You put me to shame, bro. You rarely do." Dustin had grinned and given the man a high five. "Congratulations!" people randomly shouted. "You make a great couple." "Thanks," I'd said bashfully, my delighted eyes locked into Justin's adoring gaze. This was the most perfectly wonderful day of my life. Justin Bourdain had asked me to be his wife. Among the corn dogs, the toffee apples, the candy floss, it would seem the stars in the heavens had to be in absolute perfect alignment. I had dreamed of this moment all my life. It had been Justin's wild idea to go to Vegas, to get married, for a multitude of different reasons. The most prominent one concerning his own mother, who he told me had a masterful way of sabotaging his relationships with women. "Don't get me wrong. I love my mother to death," he had confided in me. "But in her eyes, no one will ever be good enough for me." At the time, getting married on a whim like this, as soon as we possibly could, seemed like a fabulously exciting idea. Let's just say when you're high on love, everything through the compass in your head seems marvellous, as if the thoughts themselves are high on helium gas. It was like we wanted to be married so bad, there was no point in waiting for a future date, when we could pretty much get married in a heartbeat. When we returned home from Vegas, to our apartment in Bloomington, which we rented with a couple of Dustin's friends, we knew we needed to find our own place to begin our lives anew as a married couple. I didn't like any of the apartments in our price range that we'd seen online because they were far too small. The job that beckoned us in Oregon, Justin knew would be the perfect opportunity for him to be able to return to his home state, hence the idea of moving into his mother's beachside property, and it seemed irresistible to him. But for me, moving in with Justin's mother was leaving me feeling more than a little apprehensive. As far as I was concerned, such a move was a very bad idea. "You will love my mother's home," Justin assured me. "It's a hair's breadth away from the beach. It's a modern-looking, very large, contemporary-style dwelling. You know the kind of thing. Impressively geometrical, cutting-edge design, with huge floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking prepossessing views of the rugged Oregon coastline. It's in a prime, enviable position. Let's just say that properties on that stretch of coastline don't come at all cheap. The views quite literally are to die for. Many of the local residents living across that stretch of coastline get to thoroughly enjoy the exquisite ribbon of beach. Some of them jog on that beach, others take their dogs for regular walks, and many go for picnics there. At the far end of the beach is a wooded area where there are lovely walking trails, and on the other end of the beach is a promenade where there is a delightful collection of vintage shops, a pancake shop, an Italian and Chinese restaurant, and of course a frozen yogurt place. Fro-yo, I believe they call it. I know how much you love your frozen yogurt, June. I grew up there, and there's nothing like this place on earth.
I'm sure it's perfectly lovely, Justin, I'd sighed. It sounds dreamy. But I still wouldn't want to live there, if it means moving in with your mother, that is. But I understand you feel nostalgic about the place, and that's perfectly natural. It was your childhood home, after all. But you could give me bucket loads of frozen yogurt, and the most prepossessing, exquisite oceanfront views. And I still say living in a tiny, poky apartment is better than living with your mother.
Don't be like that, June. My mother isn't all that bad. Too right I feel nostalgic about moving back to Oregon, said Justin, looking at me dreamily. When I was a teenager, I would enjoy beach fires with my friends on the beach. We would have lots of parties, plenty of dancing. It was great fun. Personally, I couldn't think of anywhere I would rather live in the entire world. But living where my mother lives would cost an absolute fortune. If we lived with my mother, with my new job, I would be easily able to commute from my mother's place every day. It might be an hour's commute. Once we've got enough money, we can find our own place. But it will be an easy stopgap for the time being, living with my mother. But I know she would love to have us. And now you're pregnant with her grandchild on the way. How can she not be thrilled to have you around?
It was only after our wedding celebrations in Vegas that the following day I had taken it upon myself to do a pregnancy test, as I realized I had not had my monthly cycle for quite a long time. So when I discovered I was pregnant, there was another celebration that occurred in our hotel suite, but this time it was with ice cream and not champagne.
My God, you're pregnant, June, Justin had said, his face breaking into a perfectly huge smile. Our timing to get married was perfect. Now you're having a baby. This is the best news ever. I am such a lucky man.
How do you feel about me being pregnant? I'd asked apprehensively. I mean, didn't you want to enjoy being married for a while before we had kids?
Don't be ridiculous, sweetheart, said Justin, throwing me affectionately up in his arms. Everything with you, June, has been serendipitous. From the red scarf you wore when I first laid eyes on you, and now the baby growing in your womb. Don't you see? It's just meant to be.
I could see Dustin was genuinely delighted that I was pregnant, but for me it felt rather surreal. Was there really a baby growing inside my womb? How could this be? Was I really capable of bringing a baby into this world? But as I meditated on this idea, that I was indeed pregnant, I began to warm to the little thing growing inside me. My mother had told me once that there is no perfect time to ever have a baby.
When it happens, she told me. Then you know the timing is perfect. That's what I say.
I'm not sure living with your mother is a good idea, Justin, I said again very gingerly, especially now that I'm pregnant. Pregnant women are a nightmare to live with. I know my mother was a nightmare when she was expecting me. I gather she grumbled all the time and was obsessed in eating pickles with ice cream. It doesn't help that I've never met your mother either, and so I'm not sure she's going to take too kindly with a perfect stranger moving in with her.
You're not a stranger, sweetheart. You're my wife. She'll never view you as a stranger. Besides, you're carrying her grandbaby inside you. Don't forget that for a single second. I'm sure my mother understands the trials and tribulations of pregnancy. She can cope with a bit of grumbling. She was pregnant herself once with me, remember? It may have been a long time ago, of course, but my mother has a memory like an elephant, so she wouldn't have forgotten about it.
You're not listening to a word I'm saying, Justin. I know nothing about your mother Jackie, apart from the fact that she seems so obsessed with you, and by all accounts is a very difficult person to please. What if she doesn't like me? Have you stopped to consider that for a second? Had that even bothered to cross your mind? That we may not even like each other? You told me yourself your mother didn't like any of your girlfriends. That was one of the reasons you decided that we should get married in Vegas, so your mother couldn't intervene with our plans and put a spanner in the works, so to speak. Furthermore, your so-called well-meaning mother had successfully sabotaged all your relationships with women. So who's to say she won't do it again with me? And you want me to move in with her? Can a leopard ever change its spots, Justin? I don't think so, I said, shaking my head furiously. My bet is if your last two girlfriends were not good enough for your mother, then I certainly won't be. It sounds to me as if no one is good enough for your mother. Remember how she reacted when you told her we got married in Vegas? I think she took the news terribly badly. Don't overreact, June, said Justin, taking my hand in his and giving it a tight, encouraging squeeze. Things will be different now. Just you wait and see. Once my mother learns you're pregnant with her grandbaby, she'll be all over you like a rash, clucking away over you like a contented mother hen. My bet is she'll be so excited to tell her friends she's going to be a grandmother. My mother always likes to be the centre of attention around her girlfriends. She can be quite the socialite. You know something, Justin? The more you tell me about your mother, the less I like the sound of her. I'm not sure that my being pregnant is going to change anything for her. I mean, the way she reacted on the telephone, it wasn't good. I shuddered as I remembered Justin's conversation with his mother, when we told her our great news. The two of us were in such an elevated mood, as moments before we had been getting married in the wedding chapel, and we couldn't wait to tell our friends and families our great news. I had huddled up to Justin on the king-size bed, in our honeymoon suite at the Bellagio, drinking champagne. We had been giggling like a couple of teenagers. I had phoned my parents first to tell them our news, and my parents had been over the moon for the both of us, if not a little bit shell-shocked, of course. I had introduced my parents to Justin a few weeks prior, and they had really liked him a lot. My mother had squeezed my hands affectionately and giggled. "I think he could be the one," she told me. "I've got a very good feeling about him, dear. You've done yourself proud." My face had lit up like a Christmas tree, because my mother had never warmed to any of my previous boyfriends before. But then again, they had been a whole lot different to Justin, a lot less responsible than Justin was. My last boyfriend, Kev, whom I dated for over 2 years, was completely covered in tattoos and had several ear piercings in his ears. And my father, who was very conservative, found his appearance rather disquieting. But I think it was Kev's insouciant attitude towards life, his complete lack of ambition, that I really think upset them the most. Ironically, those were the very things that had attracted me to Kev in the first place. I liked men who fought against society's demands and were content to be themselves and to live in the moment. When my parents had asked Kev Wilkington what he wanted to do with his life, he stuffed a potato into his mouth and chewed it for a long time. Finally he spoke and nonchalantly said, "I haven't thought about that, Mrs. Gregor. I'm still young, aren't I? I've got my whole life ahead of me to think about things like that. Plenty of time. I guess something will turn up eventually. In the meantime, my focus is on enjoying myself. Living in the moment, if you know what I mean." At that, my parents had exchanged rather unsettled glances. I think they would have liked any future son-in-law to have a wee bit of ambition. I'm sure they were wondering why it was their daughter attracted what they would consider to be a long succession of deadbeat men. I think my long stream of dopey boyfriends had done very little to inspire my parents with any confidence at all. I seemed to have a type. I went for those men that were heavily tattooed with earrings, as I always liked men with tattoos. When Justin came along, my parents couldn't believe how well-rounded, ambitious, humorous, handsome and polite he was. He was the kind of gentleman any girl would be proud to bring home to Mummy and Daddy. And the best part of it all for both of my parents, my father most particularly, was that Justin didn't own a single tattoo or an ear piercing.
and that had been a pleasant surprise for the both of them. "I think he's the one too, Mum," I had told her in earnest. I really, really liked Justin. My mother had taken me into her arms and patted me on the back. "Oh, I'm so happy for you, love." I'd been surprised to see tears in her eyes. Maybe they were tears of relief, because she had probably expected me to bring home another hopelessly lost man who had no directions in his life. "Goodness gracious me, sweetheart. What is it you're saying?" she had said to me on the phone when I had called her all the way from Vegas. "The connection is terribly bad, you know. Who did you say got married? I didn't hear." "I got married, Mum, exactly an hour ago, here in Vegas. I'm phoning you and Dad to tell you our great news. Justin and I are officially man and wife. Can you believe it, Mum? I'm actually married." "Sorry, love. This connection is terribly bad, you know. Who did you say got married? Is it somebody I know?" "Mum, I got married. It's me I'm talking about," I said, raising my voice above the crackle of the phone. Hopefully she could hear me. "Oh, my goodness gracious me!" my mother cried out in abject delight. "You're married, June! You're married! You've married that wonderful man, Justin, in Vegas? What, an hour ago? I can't believe it. I'm in absolute shock. Congratulations, my love. This is the best news ever. But forgive me if I'm a little shocked. I never saw this coming. Well, not like this, I mean." I could hear her saying to my dad, "Our June has only got herself married to Justin. They went to Vegas and tied the knot. Can you believe it? They got married an hour ago at one of those wedding chapels. They're staying at the Bellagio in Vegas in the honeymoon suite there. How romantic is that?" My father had grabbed the phone from my mother and said, "Sweetheart, I'm thrilled. You make a good choice there, marrying Justin. He's a good man. I liked him from the moment I met him. Very different to the other men you dated, if you don't mind my saying so. I think you'll be very happy together. Congratulations, love. Your mother is actually shaking in her boots. You've given her quite a shock with this phone call. I think I might be trembling myself a little bit. You know how much we love you, June. And if this is what you want, we couldn't be happier for you."
"Thanks, Dad. I really appreciate that."
"I'm just very surprised, love, that you didn't want a grand ceremony of some kind. You missed out on a very big cake, a fabulous wedding dress, a fancy reception, which I always thought was every little girl's dream. I would have been very happy to pay for it all, you know. I hope you didn't rush off to get married spontaneously, just to save me money on a fancy wedding. It's the sort of selfless, sacrificial thing you would do, June. I know what you're like. You're my only daughter. Why would I not want to invest in your big day and splash out on you big time? It would have been a pleasure and an honour to have a grand celebration and pull out all the stops for you."
"I didn't want anything fancy, Dad. I promise you. Justin and I wanted to get married, and we didn't want to wait. Besides, getting married at a fancy reception with a gorgeous wedding dress that looks like a white meringue is overrated. Lots of my friends have done it, and you know what? I think I had a more special occasion. And staying here at the Bellagio is just the best. We're staying in Vegas for a few more days, seeing the sights and being pampered within an inch of my life. What's there not to like about this?"
"It sounds wonderful, love, and you deserve to be spoilt. You've got a good man in Justin. But having said that, I don't think a big wedding is overrated at all, love. We only live once, don't we? A good celebration is a rite of passage as far as I'm concerned. But who am I to judge you rushing off to get married like you did? It is rather romantic. I did the same thing with your mother. We eloped, and we're still happily married all these years later. The moment we decided we wanted to get married, me and your mother did it as fast as we possibly could. I sometimes wonder if we did the right thing there. I think your mother personally would have liked a big celebration and a fancy dress. She missed out, if you ask me.
And now you're missing out, June. That's all I'm saying." My mother grabbed the phone from my dad and said, "Don't listen to him, love. He doesn't know what he's talking about. I was incredibly happy marrying the way we did in that registry office and grabbing a couple of passing bystanders as witnesses. So I get why you did what you did, June, dear. I only wish you'd invited us to the ceremony. Never mind, we'll make up for it in due course in some other way. Have a party perhaps at home to celebrate your wedding. Congratulations, my love. I'm so very happy for the two of you, really I am. Now can I speak to your new husband? I'd like to wish him well if I may." "Of course you can, Mum," I said, grinning from ear to ear, as I handed the phone to Justin. "My mum wants to speak to you for a second." "Hello, Mrs. Gregor. How are you doing?" "I'm doing very well, Justin. I understand congratulations are in order." "Thank you, Mrs. Gregor. I'm a very happy man." "Well, mind you look after my daughter, won't you?" she had said. "That's my only girl, and she's hell of a precious to me and my husband." "Of course I will take care of her, Mrs. Gregor. It's a privilege to me. June means the world to me." "I know she does, love. And I'm so happy for the both of you. You do make a great couple. When we met you a few weeks back, I had a hunch you were the one. Congratulations to the both of you. I think me and my husband are going out tonight to a very fancy exclusive restaurant where we're going to order the finest French champagne and, of course, enjoy some oysters. We're going to celebrate your great news and toast the both of you. So we'll be thinking of you tonight." "Thank you, Mrs. Gregor. I appreciate it very much. I'm sure we'll see you soon." After we'd said our goodbyes to my parents, giggling from having drunk far too much champagne, we both dialed up Justin's mother, Jackie, to tell her our great news, and her less than enamoured reaction sobered us up from the champagne pretty fast, let me tell you. She was quick to put a spoiler on things, but I think Justin had expected as much. "Mum," said Justin, "you'll never believe what I've gone and done. Brace yourself, because you're going to have quite the shock." "Don't do that to me, love. You're scaring me, talking like this. You're not in trouble, are you? You haven't gone and done something stupid. Why do I have this ominous feeling that you've done just that?" "Nothing like that, Mum. You can relax. I've just got married to a beautiful woman called June. You've never met her before, but she's gorgeous in every sense of the word. And right now, I'm the luckiest man in the entire world." "You've what?" came Jackie's cracked voice. The poor woman sounded as if there was a golf ball stuck in the back of her throat, as she tried to digest what Justin was telling her. "Mum, I've got married. To be precise, I got married exactly an hour and 20 minutes ago. We got married at a chapel in Vegas, June and I." At this, Justin let out a couple of burps and a chuckle, because the effervescence of the champagne had gone straight to his head, and he was ever so slightly tipsy, and it certainly showed in his voice. He told his mother all this, while chuckling all the time, as if it was one big funny joke. "Are you drunk, love?" came her mother's voice. "You sound as if you're half cut, if you don't mind my saying so." "No, I'm not drunk, Mum. Happy and a little tipsy, that's all. And I'm enjoying the champagne in my hotel suite with my beloved wife. I'm a married man, Mum. Can you believe that? I can hardly believe it myself." "Is this some kind of seriously warped joke, Justin? Because if it is, I don't find it remotely funny. I'm getting older these days, and I'm much more fragile than I used to be. Joking like this is going to literally give me a heart attack, and you've been warned, son." "Mum, it's no joke. I wouldn't joke with you like this. That would be a rather unfortunate thing to do. I'm in Vegas here with June. We got married here. We're going to celebrate with a special dinner, a romantic dinner, and some fabulously exciting shows.
but we wanted to call you with our great news. I'm thrilled to be married, absolutely thrilled. Don't worry, we'll have lots of photographs to show you. June looks amazing. Well, she did look amazing, and she still does, in the pastel green dress she wore. Probably the cheapest wedding dress you ever saw on record. But you wouldn't guess it, because I'm telling you she looked incredible. It was such a special occasion. I'm so deliriously happy, Mum. This is the best thing I have ever done in my entire life. You got married? Are you insane, Justin? How long have you actually known this June woman that you talk about? Did she put you up to this, so that she could snag you for herself? I know the type only too well. Son, you are terribly naive as far as women are concerned. There are some sharks out there, let me tell you, eager to prey on a strappingly handsome man like yourself. No, Mum, she didn't put me up to this. I was the one who asked her to marry me, not the other way round. We've been living together for over 6 months now. Remember when I spoke to you, I mentioned to you I'd met someone. Yes, you said something about having met a lovely lady, but you were so terribly vague, son. I had no idea it was remotely serious. I thought you were just having fun with this lady. You've had lots of girlfriends over the years, have you not? I'm sorry, Justin, but 6 months is frivolously ridiculous. How can you possibly know someone in such a short space of time? I'll tell you this, you can't. This June woman is bound to have shown you her good side. But have you encountered her dark side yet? I doubt it very much. Everybody has a dark side, Justin. What possessed you to marry her so impulsively like this? Oh, my goodness. You didn't, did you? Did you knock her up and decide to do the chivalrous thing in marrying her? Don't wallpaper over the cracks, Justin. Tell me the absolute truth. I'm your mother and I deserve to know. And whatever mess you got yourself ensnared in, we can sort this out for you, I promise. Of course not, Mum. I married June because I love her. And no, I didn't knock her up. We love each other, Mum. That's why we got married. Is that so hard to understand? And you never thought to introduce me to this woman? You didn't even think it wise to discuss this nonsensical idea of yours with me before taking this outrageous leap of faith. You're just like your late father, Justin, you really are. I despair with you at times, I really do. This is the sort of outrageous, stupid, ignorant kind of thing your father would have done all those years ago. Good job he had me to steer his decision-making in safer waters, because your father could get himself entangled into some messy scrapes, believe me. Justin, I hate to say this, but you rush into things without stopping to think of the repercussions of some of your choices. What about the time you insisted I brought you a grand piano because you wanted to learn to play it? I told you you needed to think about it long and hard. You told me you were dead set on learning the piano, that you hadn't wanted to do anything more in your entire life. And what happened? The following week you were interested in playing the guitar and had lost all interest in playing the piano. And what did I do? I had to keep a grand piano in my home, and nobody has been playing it since. It's been gathering dust for all these years. That's how wretchedly impulsive you are, love. And you've been like that all your life. There is nothing new under the sun as far as you're concerned. This is different, Mum, and you know it is. I really love June, and I know we're going to make our marriage work. Well, I hope for your sake, love, you do, because now you've made your bed, you're going to have to lie in it, aren't you? But for the record, I do know an excellent divorce attorney that can get you out of this mess. You know you can come to me about anything, love, and don't be ashamed to admit you've made a mistake. I won't judge you for it. Mum, did you not hear a single word I said? I really love June. I'm very happy we got married. And the last thing in the world I want is to get a divorce from her, so no thanks, I won't be requiring your fabulous attorney. It's so typical of you, Mum, to blow ice-cold water over our special day like this and try and ruin it for us. I knew you would do this. It's so typical of you. Well, I don't know what to say, Justin, in the circumstances. I'm not going to apologise for expressing my true feelings on this matter. For once in my life, I am completely lost for words. I'm sorry, Mum, that this has come as a shock to you. You could say that, love. I mean, with your track record with women, what makes you believe that June, well, this woman you married, is any better than all your other girlfriends? None of them were ever good enough for you, Justin, as far as I was concerned. That's what you would say, Mum, because no one is ever good enough for me, in your biased opinion. You're my mother. You put me up on a pedestal. You think everybody compared to me is a lower form of pond life, and it's not true at all. That's because it is true, love. That's where you're wrong. The appalling girls you used to bring home over the years to meet me, well, there are no words to describe them. I hope this new wife of yours dresses halfway decent and doesn't let it all hang out like your last girlfriend did. Oh, that woman was so dreadful. Mum, Karen wasn't that bad. You're exaggerating. Wasn't that bad? Are you kidding me, Justin? The dress she wore to that party, with everything hanging out, was a complete embarrassment to me. She said it was the fashion to wear a dress that barely covered her breasts. What on earth was she thinking? I was so embarrassed I didn't know where to look. I don't know what's wrong with some people in your generation, Justin. No self-respect, no modesty whatsoever. I was utterly ashamed and appalled. It was like you'd brought a whore back home with you. God only knows what my friends must have thought. Thank God you had the sense to break up with her. That's all I can say. For your information, Mum, I didn't break up with Karen. She broke up with me. It was the other way round. And do you know why she ended things with me? Because she said if dating me meant being around you, she wanted nothing more to do with me. She said you were constantly patronizing, interfering with her, talking down to her. Mum, you've been responsible for scaring away half my girlfriends. You lay into them so hard. You make it perfectly clear you dislike them. I didn't want you to sabotage my relationship with June. That's the reason why I never brought her home to meet you, if you must know. I knew that no one would ever meet your exacting standards. That is ridiculous, love. I'm only ever looking out for you as your mother. I want the very best for you, Justin. I always have and always will, if the truth be told. I'm very disappointed in you. I'm your mother. I would have liked to have had a say in this matter, and would have been there on your big day if I could have been. Did you not stop to think about that for a moment, leaving me out of all of this? When you got married, I was hoping it would be a grand affair. We could have had a fabulous ceremony and celebration, and you've taken all that away from me. You're my only son, and I would have liked to celebrate your getting married. Mum, as I keep saying, we didn't want anything excessively extravagant, flamboyant, or expensive. And knowing you, if I had had a wedding at home, it would have been exactly that. Over the top, if you know what I mean. We just wanted a private affair, a quiet ceremony, just the two of us in Vegas. And we did just that. We're staying here at the Bellagio and having a wonderful time. Of course, it's very, very expensive. But you only get married once. We did this for ourselves, Mum. So what is this girl's maiden name? You say her first name is June? June Gregor. June Gregor. Where is she from? She's from Bloomington, in Indiana City. You know, it's southwest of Indianapolis. And I think she went to the Kelley School of Business at Indiana University. So where exactly did you meet her? I met her in a coffee shop in Bloomington, because I work here, and rent a flat here, as you know, with two friends. Well, at least you met her in a civilized place. A coffee shop is not a bad place to meet someone. When am I going to meet this new wife of yours, Justin? Soon. Well, I'm very glad to hear it, love. As I looked back on the telephone call Justin had made to his mother, only an hour and a half after we got married, I was even less inclined to want to meet her, let alone live with the woman. She sounded as hard as nails, ruthlessly calculating, and clearly incredibly judgmental. What on earth would I have in common with her? Look, sweetheart, said Justin encouragingly, fixing his kind eyes on me. I know it wasn't easy to listen to that phone call that we made after we got married. We probably shouldn't have phoned her that day. My mother had a shock, that's all. The last thing she expected was me to go off to Vegas and tie the knot with a woman she's never met. You need to make some allowances for her. Well, her less than agreeable reaction. Put yourself in her place for a moment. Her only son clandestinely gets married to a woman she's never met. It must have been a bitter pill to swallow for her at the best of times. You see, my mother, June, she'd have loved to have gone over the top over my wedding, made a big fuss about the whole thing. And I've denied her all that.
Well, I suppose it wouldn't have been easy for her to hear our news. Even my parents were confounded and a bit disappointed that we didn't have a grand ceremony.
There you go, then, said Justin. I think my mother would have liked to have indulged us with a big flashy wedding. Lots of fuss, no expense spared, as I was saying. So this has been a bolt out of the blue for her. Your parents were reasonably cool about everything, because they're easy-going folk. But I'm afraid my mother is anything but easy-going. She's very intense, highly strung, and obsessed by you, I said, finishing my husband's sentence for him. You said yourself that we should get married in Vegas because of your mother's shipwrecking ways. When it comes to previous relationships that you've had with women, now you want us to live with her. Have you gone completely mad? How is it for the life of me that this is ever going to work? Sweetheart, as I keep reiterating, it won't be for long. It's just a stopgap, that's all. I'm just being practical here. I'm an accountant, and I'm very shrewd with figures. If we rent a place, it's going to cost us a lot of money. And we won't get anything very big. It makes perfect sense to stay with my mother for the short term. She can help you during your pregnancy, and with the baby when it's born, while we build up a nice little nest egg for ourselves. My mother lives in this big place all on her own, and I'm sure she would appreciate our company. If my mother had her way, I would never move out. I would live with her permanently. I'm sure it can get very lonely for her living in that big place on her own. It'll be the perfect opportunity for you to get to know her better. You never know, the two of you might really bond. My mother did like one of my exes, you know. She did? You never told me that. Yes, the one woman I dated that I personally couldn't stand was the one my mother actually liked. Isn't that typical? My mother was actually upset when I broke up with her.
You're joking! So what did she like about this woman?
Well, I suppose Victoria ticked all the boxes for her. Her parents were super wealthy. She was very polished and polite. She'd gone to Harvard University. Was rather snooty. My mother liked that about her. But on the other hand, I did not.
So your mother is snooty, then? She likes people that come from money, obviously. And I don't come from that kind of affluent background, so she's bound not to like me.
Well, maybe you won't tick all her boxes. But when she meets you and sees how happy you make me, I'm sure she'll change her mind about you.
Now that you've told me about Victoria, I feel less and less sure that she'll like me at all. Why do I not have a good feeling about all this, Justin? I'm not happy with this one single bit. I don't think I like the idea of your mother interfering in our lives. If we live with her, that's exactly what she will do. Worse still, we'll be beholden to her. It's not going to be comfortable living with 3 people. You know the saying, 2's company, 3's a crowd. I was not remotely comfortable about the prospect of meeting Jackie Bourdain. Justin had told her we were going to move in with her for a short while on a recent telephone call that he'd put on loudspeaker so that I could listen in.
Mum, I've got some very, very good news. What is that, son? Tell me. Oh, please don't say. She's not pregnant, is she? Well, we'll talk about that later. But what I wanted to tell you, Mum, is I managed to get a very good accountancy job in Newport. An hour's commute from where you live. So I resigned from my job here in Bloomington. So the good news is we're moving to Oregon, June and I. I didn't think I would get the job, but I did.
That is wonderful news, son. Wonderful, wonderful news.
Now there are no excuses as far as you're concerned. I expect plenty of visits. And, of course, to meet this new wife of yours as soon as I possibly can. My friends were absolutely shocked, Justin, when I told them you'd gone off and got married in the way you did. They were so disappointed that there weren't going to be a grand announcement of some sort, and possibly a fancy boutique wedding somewhere exclusive. I hasten to say it was only Verity Napier, you know, the one, who thought what you did was utterly romantic. But that stupid woman has her head in the clouds half the time. She spends her life reading Daniel Steele books, and is so far removed from reality it's not true. She still believes in knights riding on black horses coming to rescue the damsels in distress. She goes all mushy about that kind of thing. Well, maybe it's good to be like that, Mum. I like Verity very much. Oh, you would say that, Justin, because like you, that woman is so damn impulsive. So tell me, love, where are you going to live? Well, Mum, me and June have been looking for apartments online, and the ones we can afford, well, they're a little on the small side, if you know what I mean. Even though they try to make apartments look big online, they're not big at all, and they're ridiculously overpriced and very expensive. Most of them in our price range we are looking at barely have enough space to swing a cat. And when I say that, I'm not exaggerating. Well, then why don't you move in with me, love, the both of you? If you're moving to this part of the world with a new job under your belt, it makes perfect sense, does it not? You can start saving almost at once. You won't have any living expenses or food costs if you live with me. It'll be a win-win situation. You'll both be doing me a big favour, as it gets desperately lonely in this big house all on my own. You and June can have the beautiful upstairs suite with the extensive balcony. While you're working, love, what will June be doing? Did she not have a job in Bloomington? What will she do out here? I hope you've considered her needs as well, and not just your own. She has her own business online, Mum. She's only just started it, so it's pretty small at the moment. I don't want her to do much, because here is what I'm going to tell you next. She's pregnant, and she does want to be a full-time mother to her baby, and be around for it, if you know what I mean. There was a big pause at the end of the line, as if Justin's mother had not expected to hear this startling news. I thought you said that you didn't knock this woman up, Justin. Now you tell me she's expecting a baby. This is a big surprise, love. You're talking about her having a baby so casually, as if it's no big deal, but it is, Sutton. Mum, before you get any wild ideas planted into that head of yours, I didn't marry June because I thought she was pregnant. We were clueless that she was pregnant when we got married. We had no idea. It was only while we were staying at the Bellagio that June suddenly remembered she hadn't had a cycle for a while. We decided to go off and get a pregnancy test, and we weren't expecting it to be a positive. We were very surprised when we discovered she was pregnant, but thrilled at the same time. So we celebrated with ice cream. We found out the day after I phoned you to tell you our good news. Well, it sounds awfully convenient to me, son. How do you know this woman didn't get deliberately pregnant, so you'd feel compelled to marry her? You hear about women ensnaring men like this all the time. It's the oldest trick in the book. That was even going on in my day, I'll have you know. I know only too well what women can be like. You know Carly Harper. Now that woman's absolutely impossible. You'd never have believed anyone would marry the likes of her. The woman is an ugly toad, and is so unattractive she looks like a bullfrog with those wide eyes of hers. Now, of course, she's ballooned so much she looks like she swallowed an entire river. She snagged her man by getting pregnant. That poor husband of hers has been saddled with her ever since and looks so miserable. But that man would not say boo to a goose. He's completely under her thumb. I saw the sad man at the supermarket recently, with a long list in his hands, obviously given to him by Carly. You cannot believe the garbage he was buying for her. High sugar, high fat, that kind of stuff. And enough Tom and Jerry's ice cream to sink the Titanic. It was all for her, you know. If she carries on this way, she'll need the fire brigade to help her out of the house every day. Mum, don't be like that. June did not entice me to marry her. It was the other way round, as I keep saying. I'm delighted June is pregnant, and I'm excited that you're going to be a grandmother, and I hope you are too. Justin, you can hardly expect me to be excited about this news of yours when you spring it on me out of the blue like this. It is very hard to digest, you know. You've got to see things from my perspective, love. You vaguely announce you're seeing someone who you met at a coffee shop in Bloomington. I don't take you very seriously because you don't sound serious about it. And then not only do you go and marry this woman on a trip to Vegas, but now she's expecting your baby. How do you think I'm going to take it? As I reflected on my husband's conversation with his mother, I did feel rather bemused. I had no idea how Jackie Bourdain was going to treat me once we moved into her house. I felt apprehensive about the matter. It had been tough leaving Bloomington, where I'd lived all my life, and saying goodbye to my parents, who were delighted that I was now pregnant. "Why do you have to move away, love?" my mother had cried. "It's just that Justin's got a job closer to home. He loves that part of the world." "That's a maybe, love," my mother had said. "I do appreciate the Oregon coast is exquisite, and I can fully understand that. I've been there myself. But living with his mother, isn't that a little tough going for the both of you? I'm not sure it's a promising start for any marriage. I personally wouldn't advise it." I hadn't told my mother about what a pugnaciously capricious woman Jackie Bourdain actually was, because it would only serve to worry her. I just reassured her that everything would be absolutely fine. But in reality I felt very disconcerted about moving to a brand new state, into my husband's mother's house. I was not looking forward to this move. I had wanted to stay in Bloomington, but Justin talked about his old life in Oregon with such a wistful nostalgia, and I found myself warming to the idea of living in a brand new state. The long, laborious road trip from Bloomington to Justin's mother's house was close to 34 hours, so we did enjoy a couple of much-needed overnight stops along the way. By the time we reached the Oregon coast, I couldn't wait to get out and stretch my legs. "Nearly there, sweetheart," said Justin, giving me a big cheesy grin. It was at this crucial point that I had to ready myself to meet Jackie Bourdain. I glanced briefly at my rather bedraggled reflection in the mirror. I had certainly looked better. I felt sweaty from the road trip. There were dark circles under my eyes from lack of sleep. The jeans I was wearing looked as if they had been slept in for a couple of days. I was beyond caring what Jackie Bourdain's first impressions of me would be. I was Justin's new wife, and if she didn't like me, that was going to be tough. Come hell or high water, I was not going to let this woman undermine me in any way. But my newly found confidence wore thin, as Justin's SUV wound up a hilly incline, where grand-looking homes basked in the sunshine, overlooking a fabulous ribbon of beach. I opened my window to allow a cool breeze to fill our car with the smell of salty brine. A couple of seagulls flew right past us, screeching loudly, and it suddenly gave me that holiday feeling. The coast was exquisite, as the undulating waves thundered to the shoreline, their edges framed by the white lacy frilliness of the sea foam. The long sweeps of golden beach and sculptural rocks stretched out forever, and I could see wood groves full of tall, lofty trees clustered together like vast congregations of people at a sports stadium. Jackie Bourdain's house was exactly as Justin had described, only a lot more ostentatious and grandiose than I had actually anticipated, so it naturally set my nerves on edge. The house was very modern, and looked like it had been designed by a cutting-edge architect. It could only mean one thing, that Justin's mother was an extremely wealthy woman, probably the kind of socialite that went to charity functions and mixed with some of society's most elite. A woman like Jackie would probably look down on the likes of someone like me, I couldn't help but think. Everything about my origins was humble, and say what you like, but in my personal opinion, inverted snobbery here in America is very much alive and well, especially among the rich and famous. As we parked our car outside the front entrance of Jackie's house, a modern-looking front door swung wide open, and there in the doorway stood Jackie Bourdain. I was almost afraid to look at her, as bashfully I waited patiently for Justin to climb out of the car, and to open my car door, which he did. I climbed out of the car nervously, sensing that Jackie Bourdain's hawk-like eyes were giving me a fleeting once-over, but I still refused to meet her gaze, as I was suddenly feeling dreadfully self-conscious and vulnerable. So much for my former confidence that seemed to have melted away on my arrival. The intimidating place that was so out of my league made me feel rather like a fish out of water. With his arms around my back, Justin directed me to the front door. Jackie Bourdain barely acknowledged me as she flung her arms around her beloved son. "Oh, Justin, my darling boy! It's so good to see you, love. It's been so dreadfully long, far too long. I have missed you so much." Justin slapped his mum on the back affectionately. "It's good to see you too, Mum. It has been too long." He then turned to look at me, gave me an encouraging wink, and pushed me forwards so that his mother could take a long, hard look at me. "This is June, Mum, my wife." "And so it is, I see," said Jackie Bourdain. Her sharp blue eyes bored into mine, and the smile on her face did not meet her cold, calculating eyes that were studying me as if I was a rare zoological specimen in a laboratory. "It's good to meet you, June, and I understand congratulations are in order." She offered me her hand, giving it a formal handshake, as any affection she obviously reserved for Justin only. What did I think of her on first impressions? That is a hard question to have to answer. I certainly didn't warm to her immediately, because Jackie Bourdain was as cold as a fish. It goes without saying that Jackie Bourdain was incredibly elegant and very well put together. The best way to describe her was that she was posh. I witnessed a disapproving expression flash across her face when she took in my crumpled appearance after our long, exhausting road trip. Jackie Bourdain would probably be one of those infuriating people that after a similar journey would look like she'd stepped out of a bandbox. Jackie Bourdain looked sensational in her outfit, her hair superbly styled, and as cutting-edge and modern as the style of her home. Her hair was a mix of several shades of blonde tones, peppered with a hint of strawberry, and the style was rather fetching on her. I expected she was a Botox queen, because she couldn't wrinkle her forehead, and her peachy complexion was in a perfect condition. Jackie was probably in her late 50s, and was a handsome woman. I imagine in her youth she was probably quite the head-turner. Her slender figure was neatly proportioned, and almost ballerinic, as she stood up with a straight deportment, as if she was about to do a plie. She was wearing a designer pair of navy blue chinos, stylishly pleated in the front, a gold-buckled belt that looked as if it cost a fortune, and a navy blue silk shirt with a pair of Tiffany pearls around her neck. She was wearing zooty gold and navy sandals, and was showing off a perfect manicure on a pair of pretty feet, which were painted in a coral shade. The woman was stylish in every sense of the word, but she was also pretty aloof. It was in the days that followed I got to learn all about Jackie Bourdain. In the beginning she observed me rather cautiously. On the first evening I had spent at her home, I had been so desperately uncomfortable, as she'd served up her evening meal to us on the cherrywood dining-room table that had been elegantly laid with only the finest linen, and the most opulent dinner service. The food had been brought to the table by a very attentive Filipino cook. It had been absolutely mouth-watering delicious, with exotic flavours like lemongrass and coriander in the pad thai. Then there was sticky rice pudding served with mango that was to die for. I was to learn that Jackie had a big thing about Thai food. She absolutely adored it. "This looks delicious, Mrs. Bourdain," I had said. "Please call me Jackie, dear." "This looks delicious, Jackie." "Well, I'm afraid I can't take credit for the delicious food in this house, much as I would like to. Annika does a wonderful job cooking, you know, managing this large house of mine for me. I wouldn't know how to cope without her. I've never cooked anything a day in my life," she told me proudly, as if this was a fact that should be celebrated. "You've never cooked anything?" I asked, looking at Jackie perturbed. "Surely you can make toast and stuff like that. Basic stuff, I mean." "No, I can't, dear. I've been very fortunate, June, my dear. Swaddled in comfort every day of my life. My parents were very wealthy, you see. And growing up, they always had a cook and a cleaner. So I never learned to cook. All I had to do was ask them for a cake or something, and they'd bake it for me. I don't even know how to boil an egg," she gloated, as if in some way not cooking made her a superior human species,
when all I could do was feel sorry for her, because whether she knew it or not, she was seriously missing out big time on a very rewarding creative outlet. Some wealthy people didn't get that. They loved having things done for them all the time, but that, in my opinion, lowered their quality of life, whether they knew it or not. "That is such a pity, Jackie. You're really missing out," I said. "Cooking is creative, you know. You may think it's a laborious chore, but that's where you're wrong. It can be great fun to be able to cook. If I've had a bad day or something, there's nothing more satisfying than throwing an interesting dish together, being inventive with flavours. It's a rewarding feeling, especially when the meal turns out to be a great success. And if it's a flop, well, you learn from your mistakes, don't you?" "Is that what you call it, June, dear?" she said condescendingly. "A creative outlet? So I take it you must thoroughly enjoy cooking in an explorative way. Is that right, June? I must admit you do look the type that is not adverse to getting your hands dirty, or breaking a fingernail or two," she said, looking disapprovingly at my short, half-bitten fingernails. "Well, yes, I suppose I do enjoy getting my hands dirty. Nothing wrong with that, Jackie. You have a great manicure, but it doesn't do any harm letting your hair down from time to time. Like a kid in a sandpit. You should try it sometime." "Me personally, I don't like to get my hands dirty. Never have and never will," said Jackie, making a face. "I like to leave the manual labour to the servants, and that's the way it should always be." I stared at Jackie incredulously, as if I couldn't believe the pompous words that had come out of her mouth. She really did consider herself quite the aristocrat, didn't she? Jackie elegantly took a bite of her pad thai, chewing it very slowly as if lost in thought. And then she said, "Look, I'm not going to beat around the bush, because what would be the point of doing that? I was grievously upset that the two of you dashed off to Vegas in the way you did to get married. It was a bitter disappointment to me. A bitter one." Jackie's eyes looked accusingly at me, as if I was the instigator of kidnapping her son and forcing Justin down the aisle to marry me. "Jackie, this was Justin's idea. I thought it was desperately romantic, so I said yes," I tried to assure her. "I'm sure you did, dear. My Justin has always been impulsive, and you knew a good thing when you saw it, didn't you? And it's desperately convenient that you're suddenly pregnant, isn't it? All at the very same time. My bet is you got pregnant, June, before you even went to Vegas. When you told my son about your unfortunate condition, he dutifully whisked you down the aisle at a moment's notice. My son is the perfect chivalrous gentleman. He would never abandon a damsel in distress, or a pregnant woman such as yourself, but do the honourable and right thing by her, because he was raised to be like that. You took full advantage of his good nature, didn't you, dear? Believe me, I know about thrifty girls like yourself." I glared at Jackie furiously. If she wanted to fight, she could have one. I was not going to be a pushover around her. How dare she speak to me like this? "What are you implying, Jackie? That I hoodwinked your son into marrying me because I was pregnant? Is that what you're saying?" I bristled. "Well, yes, I am, as a matter of fact. It's exactly what I'm saying, June. Getting pregnant is the easiest way to snag a man, and everybody knows that. I'm sure you thought all your Christmases had come at once when you met Justin. Let's not kid, my son is quite the catch. He hasn't been short of admirers. And without wishing to sound unkind, June dear, you do rather look like something the cat dragged in. Anyone can see that you're ambitiously desperate to climb the ladder to success. And what better way to accomplish your goals than to marry my son, who will one day inherit a sizable fortune thanks to his father? But then I suspect you know all about that, don't you? You probably did your research on my son. Justin is going to make something of himself one day. I'm very, very proud of him. But I guess you felt like a pig cushioned in clover, didn't you? Successfully seducing him like you did so masterfully. My son always had a soft spot for the half-drowned kitten kind of look." "Mum, that is uncalled for and unacceptable.
I'd like to remind you you're talking to my wife. Will you stop it right now? You're being extremely rude towards June. Why do you think we dashed off to get married in the way we did? I didn't want your poisonous, treacherous words destroying my relationship with June, like you've done a plethora of other times with all the other women I've dated over the years. Most of them broke up because of my overbearing, patronizing mother. Would you kindly refrain from laying into June like this? She's carrying your grandbaby, for God's sake. Show some respect, Mum. Respect has to be earned, son. Very difficult it is for me to respect your wife, since I can read her like an open book, and I know exactly what's going on in her head. Enough, Mum, said Justin, practically growling at his mother. You're doing this again to June, behaving like you did with all my other girlfriends. You cannot seem to help yourself, can you? I'm not sorry I scared some of your ex-girlfriends away. If I could scare them away so easily, as far as I'm concerned, it speaks volumes about their characters, does it not? It shows they were not worth their salt. If someone really loves you, a nasty mother-in-law-to-be isn't going to scare them away very easily. But those young ladies you dated never stood up to me. Not one of them did. They were weak and pathetic, crumbled the first time I criticized them. You need to thank me, love, that you didn't end up saddled with one of those flaky women. The only ex-girlfriend of yours I actually liked was Victoria. Now Victoria was rather brazen. She was in your face, and a very, very outspoken young lady who knew her own mind, and I liked that about her. But the moment I liked her, you did not. You went right off her. I thought it was quite ironic, really. You liked her, Mum, because she was high maintenance, very opinionated and snooty, and because her parents were both millionaires. Isn't that the truth? Now, I would really appreciate, Mum, if we could try to get along, because if you are unkind towards June, we'll have to move out. And if you continue in your condescending ways towards her, that's exactly what we will both do. Justin glared furiously at his mother. At least she had the good grace to look down on her plate like a dog that had been unduly scolded for chewing up the sofa. I was grateful that Justin had put his neck out for me, but the trouble was, while his mother was on her best behaviour, while he was around, she was not afraid to be rude towards me when Justin was away from the house, and that was when she would lay into me with her condescending words. I guess she knew that I wasn't going to go blabbing to Justin and say boo-hoo-hoo. This is what your mother said to me today, like a crybaby. I had to learn to fight my own battles with Jackie, that was for sure. Jackie Bourdain rarely believed that I had cunningly manipulated Justin into marrying me. She had made that atrociously clear. She was like implying that she was on to me, as if I had duplicitously, with a Machiavellian intent, planned to snag her son and tie him down. I know your type all too well, June, she snorted. I've met social climbers like yourself, girls from the dregs of society, desperate to make something of themselves, climbing out of the dumpster into the palace. I can smell trailer trash from a long way off, you know. Unfortunately, Justin is not very discerning when it comes to women such as yourself. He seems to always pick the needy ones, you know. I know you trapped him into marrying you, but one day he will wake up and smell the coffee and realize what you're really like, and he will see beneath the benign-looking veneer that you show to the world. I'll fix him up with the best divorce attorney money can ever buy. Not that at this stage of your life you can take much from him, because he's not earning big bucks at the moment, but that day will surely come. That's why you married him, June. You knew he was destined to great things. You wanted to enjoy all the convenient perks, didn't you, dear? As for my grandbaby, I want access to him or her after she's born, and after your divorce, because my son will divorce you. It's only a matter of time. You really think I trapped your son, Jackie, don't you? I sniggered. You really are full of yourself, aren't you? Hasn't it occurred to you that me and Justin fell in love with each other? Why is that so hard to believe? Why does everything in your life, Jackie, come down to money and status?
It's like you're living in the 1800s, believing everyone should marry into their own class. It doesn't actually work like that these days. It might have done before the war, but not anymore. People these days usually marry for love, even if that's a foreign concept to you that you don't understand, and that you can't comprehend, because maybe love to you is more like a financial agreement than anything emotionally meaningful.
How dare you talk to me like that, June? I'll have you know, me and my late husband married for love.
Really? You do surprise me. I thought you'd be more calculating than that.
I am not calculating, June. I'm judicious and saliently wise. And yes, if you must know, I do think people should marry into their own class. You are beneath my son. You know it. I know it. Furthermore, are you really naive enough to believe women don't marry for money these days? For status and notoriety and fame? You see it all the time, don't you? Young models pursuing wealthy men who are seduced by their looks and marry them because they think everyone's going to look up at them enviously, because they've got a beautiful girl locked onto their arms like a prize trophy. It's pathetic as far as I'm concerned, especially the old ugly men who think the woman married them for love. They genuinely believe that, when it absolutely is not the case. Never mind if the woman herself lacks class and practically comes from an impoverished background herself, and speaks like she's never had a decent education a day in her life. Those men can be so blindly ignorant, as you are indeed too, June, but on the opposite end of the spectrum. But like you, those women turn up their charms to draw in their prey very artfully. And when the time is ripe, the vast majority of them ask for a divorce and run away with a decent sum to set them up for life. I see it all the time, especially in the women marrying older men. It's very common.
It's true. I know what you're talking about. I've seen women myself like that, who attach themselves to old men with lots of money. But I'm not like that, Jackie, and I'm extremely affronted you have such a low opinion of me. If you had seen all my last boyfriends, you'd have known that I didn't date any of them for money.
Ah, but you didn't marry any of them, did you, June, dear? That speaks volumes. Those boyfriends were only a bit of fun, were they not? But when Justin came along, you knew he was a keeper, did you not?
Yes, I did, Jackie, actually. I did think I'd hit the jackpot when I met your son, because he was good-looking, charming, clever, funny, kind, adventurous, and so much more. And I may remind you, he doesn't have money at the moment, and I didn't even know he came from a wealthy background until I came here and met you, because he kept all that from me.
I don't believe that for a second, June. I'm not stupid. I don't buy your story. Besides, even if you didn't know he came from a wealthy background, you must have known that Justin was going places. That was blindingly obvious in every sense of the word.
Well, I knew he was ambitious, June, and I did believe he'd be successful one day. But no, that's not why I married him. You are thinking like you probably thought when you married your husband. But I don't think like you. We aren't all ambitious social climbers, you know.
You've got some brazen audacity, haven't you, June, talking to me like this? What is wrong with you? Have you no respect for your elders?
Look, Jackie, since I've moved into your beautiful home, you haven't made me feel remotely welcome here. You are angry with me for marrying your son. You believe I deliberately fell pregnant with his baby. You cannot bear it that your son didn't trust you not to ruin his relationship with me, so he discluded you from our wedding. And I bet that cut you up. That's why he was so eager to get married in Vegas. I understand now. You did this to yourself. You sabotaged all his relationships with women. I'll tell you something about my parents. Over the years, I've brought boyfriends back home to meet them that have ruffled up their feathers. But do you know what, Jackie? If I'd married one of those men, my parents would have had my back all the way. They may not think I'd made the right choice in whom I chose to marry, but they would refuse to interfere in the way you do with me and Justin's relationship. You can't resist putting your nose where it's not wanted, Jackie. And if Justin was to choose between me and you, there's no contest as to who he would choose. How dare you speak to me like that, young lady?
Let's just say if Jackie and I had been of the canine species, we'd have possibly had a dog fight together and gone for each other's jugulars until we'd drawn blood. Or if we'd been feline, the claws and the gnashes would invariably have come out. But as we were two women, we used words as our daggers without employing physical defences to our advantage. I was determined to fight fire with a water hose to put it out, which is exactly what I did with Jackie Bourdain. I refused to be intimidated and patronised by this cantankerously disagreeable, petulant woman, and I was not remotely afraid to give her my opinion. I knew, of course, that some of Dustin's other girlfriends had shrunk back into their shells, but that was not going to be me or my story. I loved Justin, and I was going to fight tooth and nail for the success of our marriage, and if it meant giving his mother a hard time, that is exactly what I would do. I realised all my life I had been the quintessential people-pleaser. I had hated causing anyone offence of any kind, but Jackie Bourdain was helping me to remove that people-pleasing veneer, and to say exactly what was on my mind. And this was very liberating, and made me feel oddly accomplished and confident. I could see slowly but surely, standing up for myself was giving Jackie Bourdain pause for thought, and a run for her money. "I feel sorry for you, Jackie," I said, "living in this big grand house, with these exquisite ocean-front views, being pampered within an inch of your life, and having everybody waiting on you, and falsely believing you're above everyone else. In reality, you're the one that's more impoverished than the rest of us. You're so luxuriously cocooned in your delusional opulent world. You're missing out on so much, and you don't even realise it. I think rich people such as yourself always believe that everything revolves around money, and that you can't be happy without it. But guess what, Jackie? Some of the poorest communities around the world are the happiest of them all. It's the little things that count, Jackie, but I wouldn't expect you to understand that at all. You think you're above all the things normal people do, but you're seriously missing out. You think cooking is a chore, when it can be great fun. You think dining at luxurious restaurants is the only way to enjoy yourself, knocking back a bottle of very expensive wine or champagne, and dining out on Michelin star food. But believe it or not, Jackie, it can be just as fun buying a hot dog and walking down the promenade of the beach and laughing like mad when a seagull snatches it away from you. I bet you've never bought street food in Thailand before from a street vendor, or shopped in a bazaar to find a bargain for yourself, because you like to shop in all those overrated designer boutiques. You're scared of ruining your hair or damaging your perfect manicure. But you'll be surprised to learn that the only one that really cares about ruining your image is yourself, because most people don't really care all that much about it. They're too busy living their own lives to worry about how pretentious yours actually is. We live in a rather delusional, self-centered world, Jackie, where some of us get off on showing off. It makes us feel better about our sorry lives. Is that what you're doing with yours, Jackie? Showing off to people to make them envious of you? I know it's popular, for example, for some young people to glamorously post up pictures on Instagram so that they can show off in their lives. It's a bit like a kid saying, "My donut is bigger than yours, and I've got more jam inside mine." "You don't know what you're talking about, June," Jackie had protested, but I'd seen a wistful but rather ambiguous look in her eyes that made me wonder if my words had finally sunk in. The next day, to my astonishment, I observed Jackie swooning around her kitchen. She was watching her Filipino cook cooking and asking for some helpful tips. "So tell me, why do you use lemongrass and ginger in this dish?" she was asking. I have to say the Filipino cook was completely gobsmacked that Jackie was showing a personal interest in Thai cooking and asking her all these questions about how to do this and how to do that. At one point I saw Jackie making a sauce with the cook, and against all the odds, appeared to be having the kind of fun her pretentious life so desperately lacked. Could I dare to believe that Jackie Bourdain had turned a corner, and that she was beginning to realise that her cushioned, pampered life meant that she was missing out on all the simple things, which in my opinion are what really make life meaningful? Was she finally getting it? It would seem so. It was early on in my pregnancy, but I was beginning to experience a few very profound changes. I will say I had suddenly had a strong aversion to all products that contained caffeine. Previously I couldn't get along with my day without any caffeine. Every morning I would rise up early, before the dawn even broke, to do my yoga exercises out on the beach, when it was still dark. Jackie lived in such a beautiful home, but it was that long stretch of beach that had truly won over my heart. The views over the water were absolutely sensational. I could easily imagine Justin when he was a little boy, sitting down on the beach with his bucket and spade, building wistful sandcastles in the sand. It was such a pity he'd never grown up to know his father, but his dad had tragically died when he was only 8 years old, when he'd chartered a small flight with his company, and the plane had come down in bad weather, and no one had survived the tragic accident. So in some ways I guess I should have had some sympathy for Jackie, but I'm afraid I did not. Jackie's account. I was devastated to learn my son Justin had chosen to get married on a whim in Vegas, of all places, in one of those tacky wedding chapels of all things. I mean, how tasteless can you get? Would you believe he proposed to his girlfriend June while she was on a roller coaster ride of all things at a fairground? I mean, who does that? I would have hoped my son would have done something infinitely more stylish and very romantic, like taking his girlfriend to Paris and proposing to her up the Eiffel Tower, or on a gondola in Venice. But no, Justin takes his girlfriend to a mediocre fair of some kind, and pops the question there, in front of people who have a mouth stuffed with cotton candy, and children with dirty fingers from sucking toffee apples, crying out to go on some kind of ride like a Ferris wheel or God knows what else. Of course, one of my girlfriends, Verity, thought it was all so dreadfully romantic that my son had whisked June off to Vegas, where they stayed at the Bellagio. But that woman practically lives in a permanent dream state. In her ideal world, everything would be made of gingerbread, and melted chocolate, of course. If the truth be told, much as I hate to say this, when it comes to my son Justin, I sometimes don't know what makes him tick. He can do the most incongruously bizarre things at times, and be so damn impulsive like his father was. That's the problem that I've tried to curb with him over the years. But the spirited stallion within him refuses to be restrained. He's a chip off the old block, that's for sure. My late husband Buzzard was like that, hence his name, always flying awkwardly into situations without thinking first about what he's doing. My son, Justin, is not what I would describe as worldly wise. Not yet, I must say. Hopefully he will change in the years to come. I mean, when I think about all the disastrous girls he used to bring home to meet me over the years, well, there are no words. It seems that he was attracted to the very needy types, something I could never understand. The women he would bring home were always shy, introverted, unsophisticated, callow, too frightened to say boo to a goose. He was always like that as a young boy, you know, rescuing everything in sight, as if it was his mission in life to be some kind of a hero. I do recall he refused to speak to me once, because I'd stood on one of those awful cockroaches. Now those things are disgusting, they really are. He was furious with me, indignantly angry, and told me in no uncertain terms that even ugly things deserved to live, and that I was a murderer. You killed it, Mummy! I hate you! I hate you! How could you do that? For years he dreamed of becoming a firefighter, you know. And as a child his favourite toy was a bright red fire truck with all these model firefighters, of which he claimed to be one of. When I'm big, Mummy, I'm going to rescue people from burning buildings, he would tell me. I began to worry, when even in his late teens he still wanted to become a firefighter. Luckily, I artfully persuaded him, as he got ever older, that he needed to go to university. And for once in his life, my bloody-minded son actually listened to me. After a while, he abandoned the idea of joining the fire brigade, so I breathed a little easier at night, I have to say. I remember once he rescued a seagull with a broken wing. We took the damn thing to the vet. It cost an absolute fortune to get that seagull flying again. We kept the thing in our home, and it pooped all over the place and had a penchant for choosing the whitest sofa in my house to deposit the contents of his guts all over. I had no idea one bird could be capable of producing a factory of poop like this thing did. When I learnt they were actually using bird poop for face masks to rejuvenate the skin, I could have made a thriving business out of the bird's feces, let me tell you. I will, however, say the seagull Justin called Squirt never ever forgot him, you know. When he set that damn bird free, it would always fly over to greet him when he was on the beach again. Justin would never forget to bring his favourite friend fish and chips as a snack. That hungry bird rarely appreciated the tasty morsels my son would bring him. He was very close to that bird, I'll have you know. The only girl he brought home to meet me that was halfway decent was Victoria Morris. Now that girl was a delight. If he'd married her, I would have been very happy indeed. She had style and class, and a very strong personality. She came from a decent background, and went to Harvard. But I think when Justin realized that I approved of his girlfriend, he completely went off her, as if in some way she had become contaminated just because I liked her. My son believes I deliberately set out to sabotage all his relationships with women, and he didn't want me to ruin what he had with June Gregor. I mean, the idea is absolutely ludicrous. For all these years, all I've ever done has had Justin's interests at heart. I give him an honest opinion on the woman he dates because I want him to choose wisely when it comes to selecting a long-term life partner. He, of course, thinks I'm a meddling, interfering busybody. Maybe I am to a certain extent, but I rarely only have his best interests at heart. My friends tell me in no uncertain terms that Justin is absolutely right, that I'm far too possessive over him, and that no one would ever be good enough for him. They say I'm playing a dangerous game, because my son could turn against me one day, especially if I upset this new wife of his. But what do they know? Many of my friends are now on their second marriage. When Justin asked if he could move in with me, I was so delighted, because having my son back home is a dream come true. Although I wish to God he wasn't bringing his pregnant wife back home with him. It would mean I would be saddled with that annoying woman all day long, and I was not remotely enamoured with the idea. When I told my girlfriends that June was pregnant, they oohed and ahed and said how wonderful it was that I was going to be a grandmother. They all falsely assume that my life is a bed of roses. How far from the truth that is. Maybe I give them that impression, but it's so far from reality. I mean, I live in such a large, very sophisticated modern home. But with just me and my Filipino cook come cleaning lady for company, it can get desperately lonely at times. Sometimes the house seems to swallow me up, it's just so large. Yet I've never wanted to downsize, because I adore my oceanfront views, and that's the reason I stay in my home. Ostensibly, nothing is better than looking out at the ocean every day, or taking a casual stroll down the beach. I have sometimes considered getting a dog for company, but then I just think of all the time it's going to demand from me. And I mean, what if it pees over the sofa? That's something I couldn't abide. Then, of course, it's going to need treatments at a pooch parlour, regular strolls on the beach, and then acquiring a dog sitter to take care of it if I was to go away on a Caribbean cruise or something with one of my girlfriends. It's too much like hard work and responsibility. What if the thing turns out to be like Squidge the seagull, lifting its leg over everything? My friend Verity, the one with her head in the clouds, has got a sausage dog, and it still isn't house-trained yet. And the last time I went to visit her, the house smelt of urine. It was just too dreadful. The moment I laid eyes on my son's wife, June Gregor, my first impression was she wasn't as sweet as she looked on the outside. That innocent, whimsical look she projected didn't fool me for a single second. That artfully guileful woman certainly has no clue how to dress. I suspect she buys all her clothes from a thrift shop. I seriously doubt she's ever worn anything designer in her entire life. Dowdy is the word I would use to describe her. A complete lack of style. For the life of me, I cannot comprehend why my son finds her so attractive. She's pretty ordinary, if you ask me. Very mousy brown hair and brown mud-coloured eyes. Let's just say, without wishing to be unkind, a few highlights in her hair wouldn't go amiss. They could transform her, let me tell you. A makeover also might work wonders on her. But if you're dowdy, what's the point of changing your look? Without wishing to sound unkind, I don't think June's worn makeup a single day in her life. She's very unsophisticated. When I saw her, I knew she'd duped my son rather artfully into marrying her. She probably announced she was pregnant. And what did my chivalrous son do? The right thing by her, of course, and whisked her off to Vegas to get married, in some mediocre run-of-the-mill wedding chapel there. Well, at least my son stayed at the Bellagio. But honestly, getting married on a whim like this was absolutely ridiculous and nonsensical as far as I'm concerned. When he phoned me to tell me the horrifying news, well, let's just say I wanted to slap him across the face, I was so mad. Still, I think in time he may come to his senses and realize that June Gregor is nothing but an ambitious gold-digger, looking for a man to feather her nest for her, with plenty of grandeur. She obviously knew someone like my son was going places. Justin fails to see what I'm so clearly seeing, as clear as day, almost as if I'm looking through a translucent pane of glass. But as far as he's concerned, June is the most beautiful thing he's ever seen in his life. When I first met June Gregor, I thought to myself, here we go again. Another girl with a broken wing who needed fixing, which is exactly why my hopelessly romantic son had fallen for her hook, line and sinker, like he always does with helpless women who need to be rescued in some way. My son is incorrigible like that. He's got the soppiest heart that I've ever seen. I tried to harden him over the years, make him a wee bit more cynical about the world, but no such luck. Justin always sees the very best in people. Like so many of Justin's previous girlfriends, June was typically reticent and bashful. I thought to myself, this is another one, just like all the others, a cardboard cutout of all of Justin's previous girlfriends. Only this time he's only gone and married the woman. When I started giving June a piece of my mind, preferably when Justin wasn't around to defend his wife's character, I was rather startled when the woman began to stand up for herself. Now, I wasn't expecting that at all. I was clandestinely secretly impressed by her balls, for none of Justin's girlfriends have ever dared to stand up to me, but have usually shrunk away into the shadows and usually disappeared from Justin's life as a consequence. June didn't hesitate to spit out her venom at me, and some of the things she said weren't exactly easy to hear. She began to tell me how shallow and miserable my life was. She was telling me I was consumed by my social and public image, and was spoilt, entitled, and self-centered. She told me I was used to people doing things for me, so much so that my life was lacking in fullness, that you get from the little things. She was telling me that money didn't buy you happiness, and it was life's little pleasures that make us joyful, like enjoying a hot dog down the Broadwalk. And do you know what? I cannot actually remember the last time I ever did something like that. I've never tasted street food in Thailand, or bought clothes from a cheap bazaar, or bartered for a bargain. And I guess what I realized was that June was right about me. Maybe I was missing out, and I didn't even realize it. So I have decided to make some significant changes in my own life, to make it a little bit more rich. The other day I surprised my Filipino cook when I asked her to teach me how to make pad thai. That woman is married to a Thai man, so she knows all about Thai cooking. I thought she was going to faint when I asked her to teach me. She looked as if she was going to pass out from the mere shock of it all. But in the end, she seemed to thoroughly enjoy teaching me how to cook. And in a strange way, I think we bonded over the activity we shared together. I will say this. When I'd finished cooking the dish, I knew so much more about my Filipino maid. And I also felt so accomplished. I can't remember having so much fun in such a long time. I'll make sure the next time I take a walk along the beach, I'll stop off and buy myself a hot dog. And maybe I'll even pick up a dog from the shelter to walk along the beach. Maybe June has helped me to reevaluate my life after all. But I'd never tell her that. I wouldn't give her the satisfaction of knowing that. When June said I was a social climber and only cared about my public image and hanging around in the right social circles with affluent friends, that was not easy to hear, because I've never really considered myself a snob. But maybe I am, and she's probably right. I do care about my image far too much. And for what, I don't really know. She said something that really put the knife in, I have to say, that everybody was so caught up in their own lives to be worried about little old me. She went on to say everyone with any sense knew that all this fancy stuff people regularly put up on their Instagram posts was all for show. Personally, I've never done anything like that. I've never believed in airing my dirty laundry for all to see, even if the laundry in question is scrupulously clean, without a stain or blemish in sight, and is drying on a deck of a fabulous cruise liner, somewhere luxuriously exotic. I just would never do that. Let's just say, if I'm being ruthlessly honest, doing that, in my opinion, well, there are no words. It's dreadfully vulgar, is it not? I'm not from that showy generation that hangs out the details of my life like that. But I do understand what June is saying with all this. I was looking at Verity's 22-year-old daughter's Instagram posts, for example, when June put the idea into my head. I just suppose I was a little bit curious. Now, I couldn't believe how showy her images were. Rosalind had airbrushed pictures of herself, looking as if she was 100 pounds lighter on a cruise liner somewhere. And her fat face had suddenly miraculously developed cheekbones that I do not believe exist on her at all, nor have they ever existed on that face of hers. Then there was all the bragging that went along with the images that she presented in those posts. Oh my God! This restaurant was brill! It was actually Michelin star! This is what I ate! Check out my pictures and everything I ate! Let me tell you, the foie gras was to die for. Look at me now! I'm in Milan! Rained all day! I ate at the finest Italian restaurant in Italy. Check out the squid ink pasta I ate with truffle sauce. Oh my God! Never eaten anything so good in my entire life! The pasta was perfectly al dente. Then there were the responses from the posts. You look gorgeous. Love the black pasta. How can you eat so much and be so thin? I'm so jealous. June was saying all these Instagram posts are but showy stuff designed to make other people feel inadequate about themselves and their own lives when they compare themselves to these so-called fashionable images projected to us by social media influencers that are far from real. The truth is that these influencers post these things because sometimes, I hate to say this, but there's a huge void in their own lives that desperately needs to be filled, and that their real lives are a lot less colourful than they present to the world. Not that I'm a fine one to talk, of course, because I employ image a lot in my own life. Probably because my own life has been pretty meaningless up to now, which, of course, June is quick to point out to me. Maybe I'm being vulgar, in a less obvious way, if you know what I mean. I know I'm harping on about this a lot, but it's come to my attention that image matters to us a lot. What people think of us is always very important. I could see, for example, that in many of Rosalind's Instagram posts, airbrushing had been ruthlessly performed to make things infinitely more glossy than they really are. Having said that, if I'm being truly honest with myself, if I had a photograph of myself with big fat ugly black circles under my eyes, and if I looked 50 pounds heavier, wouldn't I be sorely tempted to adjust the images to make myself more glamorous? I would if I could, I suppose. I must not be so quick to judge and condemn. When June said all this to me, I realised she wasn't as ditzy and airheaded as I thought she was. And maybe, just maybe, she was not such a pushover after all. Don't get any ideas. That does not mean for a single moment I'm warming to my daughter-in-law. I wouldn't go that far. I still say that my son Justin could have done a whole lot better than marrying June. But my friends keep pointing out to me that in my biased opinion, no one would ever be good enough for him. And that's probably true too. I will say that I've never seen him look so deliriously happy before. He is hopelessly in love with June, and excited about becoming a father soon. I hate seeing June making him so happy. I guess it does make me awfully jealous. I've always been the only woman in my son's life, you see. I know if my son had to choose between me and June, he would take his wife's side every single time. And that is hard for me to have to accept and to take on board. Justin has always been my entire world. I raised my son, changed his diapers, took care of his every need, and now I know I'm the second most important person in his life. I'm no longer his number one. And yes, that bothers me awfully. I wonder if other mothers feel like I do about their sons. The trouble is no one wants to admit their true authentic feelings, because it wouldn't be socially acceptable, would it? Maybe this is one of the underlying reasons I have mercilessly tried to sabotage Justin's former relationships with other women in the past, with a huge measure of success, I might add. I tell myself it's because these girls are not good enough for him, but I suspect the truth is that when push comes to shove, in reality, I'm furiously jealous of anyone who steals my son's attention away from me. I told June that when Justin saw through her, he'd dump her like a hot potato and demand a divorce. I lied, of course. I know Justin is as loyal as a goose is. And let me tell you one thing about geese. Those birds stay faithful all their lives, rarely ever partner up with another bird, even after their partner has died. My son is one of those extremely loyal, devoted men. My husband was devoted to me like that when he was alive. He loved me warts and all, and believe me, there were many of those. Even though he described me as the most impossible, difficult woman he ever had the pleasure to meet. But he enjoyed the challenges of being married to me, because I kept him on my toes. It was wonderful having my son living at home with me, commuting to his job every morning. I noticed that June kept herself to herself, avoided me like the plague, you could say, because if we got talking for long enough, we usually ended up tearing each other apart with our unkind words. I dare say she was clandestinely thinking that I was the mother-in-law from hell. In truth, I probably was. I don't exactly wear that badge of honour with any pride. I keep telling myself June's carrying my grandchild in her womb, and if I do anything to upset the woman too much, she and my son just might move away, and I would absolutely hate that to happen. My friends all thought I should be deliriously happy, having June floating around the house with a grandchild on the way, but I have felt nothing but disdain towards her. June was introduced to my girlfriends over a lunch event that I invited her to attend. They all thought she was absolutely wonderful, and I was being unreasonable to judge her so harshly. They are not wearing my shoes, are they? They don't know what it's like to have the person you love more than life itself, which in my case is my son Justin, giving someone else their undivided attention and devotion. So yes, I'm rather jealous about my daughter-in-law. I can't help myself. Things changed, of course, when I realized June was getting up early in the morning, after Justin had left for work to perform her yoga exercises on the beach. Honestly, what is that woman thinking? Goodness gracious me, she's pregnant. Justin left the house when it was still dark because he's always been an early bird like that. He enjoys arriving at work very promptly. I would hear June shuffling around in her bedroom rather awkwardly after he left. I was a light sleeper. I always liked to get up myself to give my son a coffee for the road. "Mum, you don't have to get up on my account. Why don't you go back to bed and have a sleep in?" he would say rather indignantly. "Oh, but I would insist. I don't want you going onto the road without a coffee and a little snack in your stomach. You need something, love, before you go." "Mum, you're the best. Justin would say, throwing his arms around me with a big hug. "What would I do without you?" "I'm sure you would survive," I would tease. After Justin left for work every morning, June would predictably get dressed in some yoga leggings, and with her yoga mat in hand, would nonchalantly swan off to the beach to do some of her yoga poses under a dark, looming sky, while she waited for the sun to rise. Honestly, what was that woman thinking? Sometimes I despair, wondering what is going on in that head of hers. This daughter-in-law of mine seems determined to ruffle my feathers at every turn, even though she has no idea she's actually doing it to me. I was now concerned about June's safety, which aggrieved me slightly because I didn't want to be concerned about her in any way. But I couldn't stop myself from worrying. I mean, I knew what could potentially be out there on that beach in the early hours of the morning, when darkness still reigned supreme. I realized if anything were to happen to June, then my grandbaby could be in serious trouble, and the idea of becoming a doting grandmother was beginning to appeal to me rather, although I've never admitted as much to June. I've feigned very little interest in the baby growing inside of her. I was already preparing a nursery for the baby, although June knows nothing about this grand gesture of generosity of mine, which I would later reveal to her when my grandbaby was closer to being born. Let's just say I wanted to make it as difficult as possible for my son Justin to want to leave home, now that he and his wife have moved in with me. I just adore having him back under my roof again. "June," I said to her, "where are you going, and what on earth are you doing? Do you realize how early it is in the morning? It is still dark outside. What are you doing with a yoga mat in your hand? Honestly, you can't go out at this time of the morning. Are you kidding me or what?"
"I'm an early riser," she told me. "I can't get back to sleep after Justin leaves for work. I'll just remain in bed, tossing and turning, and I don't want that. I always got up early in Bloomington, you know. I did my yoga on the front balcony while it was still dark outside. Let me tell you, this is the best time in the morning to do my exercises. I take a torch with me. I do them in the dark until the sun rises. It's spectacularly beautiful to watch the sun rise and to see the waves crashing and washing over the sand. And when the sunlight glitters over the water, it is beautiful to behold. I find the experience soulfully invigorating." "Well, that's the maybe, and I'm sure it is very invigorating, June. But can you not do your exercises in your bedroom, perhaps, if you can't get back to sleep? It's not a good idea for a pregnant woman like yourself to be wandering around in the dark on the beach. You are a pregnant woman. You have a responsibility to the baby you're carrying inside you, for goodness sake. You need to take care of yourself and the baby." "Since when did you care about the baby or about me?" said June, making a face. "I would have thought you'd be happy to get rid of me. You've made it perfectly clear you don't enjoy me being around, and that I'm not good enough for your son. So I'd think you'd be glad if I was abducted by aliens, or something untoward was about to happen to me." "Don't be ridiculous, June. Honestly, you are talking absolute nonsense. For your information, I do actually care about you. I may not be good at showing it, but I do. And I'm very concerned about your well-being. And don't forget you're also carrying my grandbaby inside of you. I've got a duty of responsibility towards you and the baby. Does Justin know you go out to do yoga at this absurd time of the morning on the beach? I bet you he doesn't. And I've got a feeling he wouldn't be best pleased if he knew about it." "No, he doesn't know, and I would appreciate, Jackie, if you didn't tell him, because like you, he'd probably go on and on about it not being safe. And that's ridiculous. The beach is perfectly safe. Besides, I can take care of myself, Jackie," she said, looking rather annoyed. "It won't be long before the sun comes up. And don't worry, I'm not going to be abducted by little green men. I was just toying with you when I said that." June, cluelessly and very naively, in her callow ignorance, had absolutely no idea that abduction was the very thing I was concerning myself with.
She was making a nonchalant joke about this, about the possibility of being abducted, because she had no clue what I knew could potentially be out there on that beach, especially when it was dark as it was right now. "June," I said, unable to disguise the rising panic in my voice, "I don't think it's a great idea going out onto the beach at this time of the morning. It's still incredibly dark out there, and it's not safe. Anything could be out there. And you're right, Justin would not be remotely happy about this. Why don't you wait for a sensible hour of the morning, when it gets lighter, when regular dog walkers and runners are up and about, taking their morning exercise? That would be so much more advisable. Better for you, I think."
"Look, Jackie, you mean well, I'm sure you do, but I can look after myself. I rarely enjoy doing my yoga on the beach at this time of the morning. There's no other time like it. I do not want to be doing my yoga in front of passing dog walkers and runners. This is my special time, if you know what I mean. To be with nature and to enjoy the privacy and the space. I'll see you when I get back," she said. "And by the way, Jackie, thanks for caring. I really didn't think you did."
She gave me a warm smile that seemed quite genuine, actually. I was rather taken aback. I managed a half-hearted smile in return. Despite my very best efforts to discourage June, the infuriating woman paid me no heed and simply marched out of the door and left me wondering what I should do to prevent her from taking her morning exercises out of doors. If she continued this way, things could potentially become grievously dangerous. But June was blindly oblivious to this. My God, Justin certainly knew how to pick his woman. I knew what could be on the beach at this time of the morning. I'd seen her before, and I was concerned about what she might do if she was to observe June with her own eyes. There was something wrong with that creature. Its head was very oddly shaped, as if she was mentally impaired or retarded in some way. I was worried about June, as the threat on the beach I had never told anybody about before, for fear of being ridiculed, of course. But the fear was very real, and it was a female Bigfoot. This creature was likely to be around in the early hours of the morning, but I had encountered her myself, and never have I been so terrified in all of my life as I was on that particular encounter, which I was sure would end up with me breathing my very last. So naturally, I was very concerned about June. Maybe the thing was long gone, but you can never be sure of these things, can you? It happened about 2 years prior, well, my experience, on the anniversary of my husband's death. You know what it's like on precious anniversaries. It makes you become gooey with sentimentality, so much so that you would make a chocolate molten cake almost seem hard. At the time I was feeling so desperately sad, so sorry for myself. So many people naively believe that when you lose a beloved loved one, that you move on with your life seamlessly, and things get easier along the way. But in my experience, they never really do. I hide my pain extremely well, of course, because I've always been a privately reserved person, and I keep check of my emotions all the time. Every year on the anniversary of my husband's death, I quite literally fall apart. I pretend to Justin and all my close friends that I've come to terms with my husband's passing. But it's a bare-faced lie. Nothing could be further from the truth. But I like to maintain an air of being strong and in control and having my life together. But as June was quick to point out, image for me is everything. It always has been. And I need to change that about myself. Ostensibly, I knew when Buzzard was taking a tiny aeroplane with some high-profile entrepreneurs for a business conference that it was a very bad idea. I've never felt good about tiny planes. And when the plane came down, killing all 5 passengers on board, I can't say it came as a complete surprise to me. Deep down in my gut, I knew something bad would happen to my husband, as before his death I'd been plagued with nightmares, where my husband's decapitated head would come rolling towards me. At first I thought someone was kicking a ball towards me in my dream on the beach, but when I bent down to see the decapitated head, I realized it belonged to my husband. I would wake up screaming, and my husband would comfort me, telling me I had nothing to worry about. Of course, I never told Buzzard the details of my dream, because I just couldn't tell him. I did tell my girlfriends, of course, who told me not to worry about it because it was a gory dream, and perhaps I'd seen something macabre on television that had influenced my dream state. I so wanted to believe what they were saying is true, but the feeling of impending doom hung over me for several weeks. And when my husband took that plane trip, I begged him not to go. I don't like you taking a tiny plane. I don't have a good feeling about this. Please don't go. Can't you pretend to be sick or something? My husband had laughed at me, taken me lovingly into his arms, and said, "I'm going to be just fine, Jackie. That plane's been used dozens of times by the company. It's perfectly safe, I can assure you of that." Well, needless to say, the plane was located on the sprawling Canadian wilderness. It was in tatters. Everybody had died tragically, and my husband's head was found separated from his body. So yes, dreams, I believe, can be prognostic. So it was on the anniversary of Buzzard's death, about 2 years ago. I had woken up in bed very early, given myself a couple of stiff brandies to help me get through the next 24 hours, so I thought. I'm not exactly a big drinker, never have been, really. But I knew the brandy would numb the vacuous emptiness inside me. I couldn't help it because I was arrested by an all-consuming grief. And even though my son Justin has never seen me like this, crying like I was, I completely soaked my pillows with my tears. I'd never normally go out on a stroll on the beach while it was still dark. But goodness gracious, after a couple of brandies early in the morning, I suddenly felt rather energized. And taking a stroll on the beach seemed like a great idea. It's amazing how many things seem like a great idea when you've become a little tiddly. Besides, a walk is always good when you're down in the dumps. This is something my grief counsellor advocated. "Take a walk, Jackie," he would say, "if you need to lift your spirits. It's the best advice I can offer you. It works for everyone I know." Unlike June, in a more sober frame of mind, I'd have never undertaken a walk on the beach while it was still dark outside, because I'm much more responsible than that girl. But it's amazing how your inhibitions can just float away when you've got a couple of stiff drinks inside of you. I was rather inebriated, I will say this about myself. As I walked down the beach, not exactly in a straight line, I had a flashlight in my hand. It was about 4 o'clock in the morning, I would say. That was when I saw the Bigfoot. It was dark, so I sensed a presence around me. I observed this big black hulking silhouette, basking there in the moonlight, as if soaking up the moon's energy. I remember stopping short in my tracks and saying, "What the hell is that?" In my slightly bladdered state, I thought I was delusional, and I began to giggle, because I thought it was all hilariously funny, that I was visualizing this thing that wasn't there. But then I realized that it was, and that this thing was actually real. The Bigfoot was staring at me, excitedly, through dark, spirited eyes, like a kid looking at a puppy dog he wants desperately to bring home with him. I remember when my flashlight illuminated her under the inky sky. I knew at once she was female. Her breasts were saggy, and very visible beneath the thatch of thick, slightly tangled-looking hair. I had a profound sense of absolute knowing that this female Bigfoot wanted to abduct me. How I knew this was by the childlike, enamoured but rather bedazzled look she entertained on her face when she looked at me, that I could read rather like a book, and it gave me cause for alarm. The female Bigfoot was looking at me as if I was a toy she wanted to grab and play with like a doll. I sensed she wasn't right in the head, as if she was handicapped, retarded, or rather simple-minded. I'd say she was easily about 8 foot tall, extremely well built, with a very human-looking face, on a very odd-shaped head that made her look very, very simple, as if she had the intellect of a 4-year-old child. She was covered in this dark hair, but smelt as briny as the sea itself. She was carrying a crab in her hands, but she dropped it onto the beach casually, and it happily scuttled away. The next thing I knew is the Bigfoot let out a loud, excited squeak, and then began to give me chase, running after me in delight, like a kid running after crabs in the sea sand. She sounded like a child, happily chasing after a kite. I may have been slightly wasted, but sensing danger in the air, my legs began to almost vibrate beneath me, and my body seemed to gain momentum rather magically. In that adrenal response, rather like a plane in takeoff, I ran like I have never run before or since, and somehow my alcoholic intoxication seemed to pass me by. As I focused on escaping this thing, I knew the Bigfoot would catch me. There was no doubt about that in my mind. I don't think I've ever felt so much fear. My life seemed to flash before me, as if I sensed I was living on borrowed time. I could feel her raspy breath on my back. And then she grabbed me. I found myself looking into her dark, excited eyes. She began touching my face, running her hands down my skin, with an expression of total awe, as if she thought I was the most precious, beautiful doll she'd ever seen. I stared into her eyes, and I was terrified. And then she was about to throw me on her back, when I heard this booming voice in the darkness. "Mokilanita, Hampali!" Someone appeared to be calling her. I guess it was one of her kind. She let go of me, looking bitterly disappointed, and then ran across the beach towards the voice, and was gone. In the distance, against some tall, lofty trees that fringed the edge of the woods that stretched down at the far corner of the beach, I saw two prominent black silhouettes. I knew at once they were Bigfoots. They seemed to guide the female away. I realized I'd had an awfully lucky escape, for I had no idea what this female Bigfoot could have potentially done to me. I was naturally very concerned about June going out onto the beach this early in the morning. What if she was to encounter the same creature that I did? So I knew I would discreetly have to follow her. There was no choice in the matter. I'd have to do it. I armed myself with some pepper spray in the hope that should this female Bigfoot appear on the scene, I could spray her in the eyes to give June time to get away from her. How could I possibly tell my daughter-in-law, "Oh, by the way, don't go out onto the beach because there's this weird Bigfoot that might just abduct you"? How crazy would I sound if I were to tell her that? I have my reputation to consider. Most people don't believe these things are even real, but I know they are, because of my very close encounter with the Bigfoot. So there I was on this early morning, dashing after my daughter-in-law, hoping that she wouldn't realize I was stalking her. I needed to see that she came to no harm, because not only was she carrying my grandbaby inside her, I knew that if anything untoward were to happen to her, Justin would never forgive me. I could almost hear him saying, "You let her go out onto the beach when it was still dark outside? Are you crazy, Mum?" Even if I assured him I'd tried to dissuade his mulishly stubborn wife, he would argue that I could have gone after her. "For God's sake, she's pregnant, Mum. Why didn't you watch over her, especially if it was still dark?" I felt a little apprehensive as a slight breeze whipped against my face. I could smell the salt in the air and practically taste it on my tongue. I knew the night would soon fade away, as light eventually broke through the inky firmament. And when it did, I would discreetly make my way back to the house. It was quite a light night with a full moon and a whole galaxy of bright stars, and with the moon reflecting its light over the water, and its prisms dancing over the ocean, in a reflectant silvery glaze, I was struck by how magnificently beautiful it was. It was made all the more magnificent by the rushing waves, galloping to the shore, like thousands of white stallions, racing through the water. I could see the light on the beach, and there was June doing a downward dog pose under the moon. It did look quite dramatic. I'm lucky that she was on a quiet, rocky part of the beach, so I ducked down behind a large rock to clandestinely watch over her, with my pepper spray at the ready. I did feel like a dreadful snoop, but I wasn't going to give June the satisfaction of knowing I was worried about her, as that would mean I actually cared, and I enjoyed being aloof towards her, although this morning she seemed surprised that I was rather concerned about her welfare. I suddenly felt rather stupid hiding behind a rock, watching my daughter-in-law, like a perverted peeping Tom, as she seamlessly flowed into all manner of yoga poses. She was really good, surprisingly nimble. But dare I say, when she got more heavily pregnant, she'd no longer be able to perform half of these exercises. There was no way I was going to spend every morning watching over her while she performed her downward dog sequences. I would tell my son Justin when he returned home tonight that after he left for work every morning, his wife would sneakily go out onto the beach while it was dark outside to perform her yoga postures. I wouldn't be able to tell him about the Bigfoot I'd encountered 2 years prior, but I think what his wife was doing would alarm him enough, and he would prevent her from going out onto the beach while it was still dark. He certainly needed to put a stop to this idiosyncratic behaviour of hers. Of course, if the truth be told, I didn't necessarily believe that the Bigfoot I had encountered 2 years prior would actually show up and make an appearance. But you can never be too sure about anything, can you? I could see the darkness slowly beginning to fade, and I felt relief as the sun slowly began to rise, and an injection of light seemed to pirouette through the dark veil. An orange sun peered over the horizon, dappling the water in whispers of dancing light. It was spectacular to witness, almost taking my breath away. I realized at this point June was meditating. She had her hands on her knees, her eyes were closed. She appeared to be humming to herself. I had no idea she enjoyed meditating. I was learning quite a lot about my daughter-in-law. My relief about the light stealing its way across the sky was short-lived, because the female Bigfoot I'd seen 2 years prior reappeared. She was standing there in bemusement, watching June meditating. I could hardly believe it. She was back again. I observed an animated, intrigued look appear on her face, a similar look that she'd shown me when I'd known she'd wanted to grab me. I genuinely felt this Bigfoot was very simple. She had the mind of a child. Like a little girl, she studied June, as if she was a Barbie doll that she wanted to take home to play with. Even if she meant June no harm, she was so huge, it would be nothing for her to break June's bones. She was pretty ungainly and obliviously unaware of her own strength. When she had chased me that day, I could see she had appeared clumsy on her feet. I was stuck between a rock and a hard place, not knowing what I should do, and the pepper canister in my hand seemed pretty useless. I was about to scream out to warn June to get away from the Bigfoot, because it was stealthily moving towards her, but my voice seemed to be locked. Nothing came out of my mouth. My worst fears were confirmed when the Bigfoot grabbed June and threw her over her shoulders as if she was a sack of potatoes, and began to run with June on her back, down the beach. In that moment I knew I cared about June, more than I was actually prepared to admit. Maybe the girl was growing on me after all. Maybe I was rather fond of her. I was certain I was never going to see her again. I tried to scream as I ran after the Bigfoot, waving my pretty useless pepper canister in my hand, as if it could somehow save the day, rescue the moment. But there was no way it could. I was no match for this female Bigfoot. I staggered after her, feeling absolutely exhausted and worn out, but she vanished into the woods, disappearing from my sight. I helplessly collapsed onto the beach. Oh, I was exhausted, worn out, tired. I began to bawl my eyes out. What use would it be to call anyone for help? The Bigfoot would be long gone by now. I'd never ever see June again. And what would I say to my son Justin? Could I ever tell him the truth about why his wife had disappeared into thin air? Would my son even buy that June, for no reason at all, had disappeared under my watch? And even if there were a police investigation into the matter, would they believe my preposterous account? Of course not. I couldn't tell them something like this. They'd probably think I belonged in a funny farm. Or in some way the mother-in-law from hell, who despised her daughter-in-law, had secretly disposed of her body in the ocean. Maybe they'd believe that. Would my son believe his mother was capable of such an atrocious evil? Would he ever be able to look me square in the face again? This was a hopeless situation. Who did I call for help in these bizarre circumstances? Help! Please help! My daughter-in-law's been abducted by a Bigfoot. Someone would probably think I was high on drugs or something like that. June's account. I couldn't believe it when my mother-in-law, Jackie, actually tried to stop me going out onto the beach that morning. For a moment it actually seemed like the toffee-nosed woman actually cared about me. Maybe there was a heart in her after all. I hope she wouldn't blab to Justin about my morning regime. If Justin learnt I was doing yoga poses on a mat on the beach while it remained dark outside, he wouldn't be remotely amused by this. Justin would tell me to go onto the beach later in the morning, when the dog walkers and joggers were about, because it was likely much safer then. It was definitely safe out here, from what I'd gleaned. So what did I have to worry about? This was a special time to be alone with myself, and I loved more than anything in the world watching the sun rise while listening to the crashing waves. There was nothing quite like it. Ostensibly, if Jackie had her way, these trips to the beach of mine at this hour of the morning would be very short-lived, for my persuasive husband would possibly rein me in like a wild horse that needs to be tethered. Still, I was going to enjoy my yoga and meditation this morning, while I could. I was settled happily on my mat, performing my poses. It felt so very good to stretch out my body and to stare up at a moonlit sky with a dazzling array of silvery stars with their jewelled faces shining down upon me. I needed to do these yoga exercises more than ever, as living with a cantankerous Jackie was far from easy for me. I didn't tell Justin about our regular disputes. I knew it would grievously upset him. He was so busy settling down into his new job, and if he knew his mother was giving me a hard time, it would be a source of great disquiet for him. These morning routines were helping me to centre myself, to remain calm throughout the rest of the day. I couldn't help but like Jackie, even though she was so damn pretentious and so full of herself. But I clandestinely suspected there was a softer side to her character, that she kept discreetly hidden from the rest of the world. Jackie was Justin's mother after all, and if she'd brought him up to be such a charmer, she couldn't be all that bad, could she? She was probably very spoilt, used to having everything in life upholstered by grandeur. But I think she was beginning to see that life is about the little special moments you spend with loved ones. And while money has its distinct advantages, it certainly cannot fill up your soul with the richness that comes from those precious moments that no money on earth can buy. I was listening to a famous man recently on a podcast. I won't mention his name. He was saying he'd learnt that through his riches and fame, that inanimate things cannot make you happy. I thought that once I had everything my heart desired, that I had arrived in life, that I would now feel fulfilled, but I was still vacuously empty, even when I could have everything that money could possibly buy me. I soon realized happiness comes from within. I read people's comments that were scrolled down below. Everybody agreed with him. "Too right, man," wrote someone. "I was in that place, had more money than sense, gave it all away and went to India to spend time with the yogis. Best thing I ever did. I feel happy now. I'm satisfied with a lot less." Another person wrote, "I was so ambitious. I wanted to be a multimillionaire many times over. Thought it would give me my heart's desires. When I finally accomplished my goal, I thought, what now? I realized nothing had changed. I was as empty as I'd always been." That was what I was trying to teach Jackie. So seeing her cooking with a Filipino cook one day made me realize she had taken on board some of my salient advice, although she'd never admit it, of course. She was far too proud for that. So there I was on the beach on my yoga mat, enjoying the morning's wrestling match, with the inky sky soon surrendering to the light, certain victory. The victorious light was now disturbing the horizon with its tangerine-like glow. How glad I was not to be in my bed. There was something so spiritual about being one with nature at this quintessential perfect moment. It was when I began to meditate that something extraordinary happened to me. I was lifted up into the air and thrown onto this hairy creature's back. Of course, at the time I didn't realize this was happening. It was all so surreal. I actually thought it was part of my meditation. I was inwardly congratulating myself for what seemed to be like a real out-of-body experience. Had my meditation advanced to new heights, I wondered? I was thinking to myself, this feels so real, until I realized to my horror it actually was. I had no idea what was carrying me, but this thing was so huge, and I was powerless to free myself from its powerful grasp. Imagine being pinned under a forklift truck and being unable to move or break free from its formidable hold. This is exactly what it was like for me. I don't believe I screamed. People often think when you're terrified that that is exactly what you will do. But sometimes you don't. In my case, I was so shocked that no words actually came out of my mouth. The next thing I knew was that the creature was running through the forest at such an impressively fast speed, crashing thunderously through the trees like a charging elephant, and pressing the leaf litter under its powerful feet like a mighty pestle and mortar. It seemed this thing was moving like a freight train, bouncing on the vegetation like a trampoline. I could feel the rise and fall of the Bigfoot's chest, and hear her heavy breathing. Then it hit me. I had been abducted by a Bigfoot. Was this really happening to me? The Bigfoot finally put me down, behind a tree, where I slipped beneath the creeping shrubbery, so my body dropped to the ground on a mattress of soft leaves. I stared up into this human-looking face. I could sense almost at once that this Bigfoot was very simple, with the demeanour of a 4-year-old child, even though she was fully grown. I got the sense that she was somewhat retarded. Her head was an odd shape, almost as if she was born with water on the brain or something. She began to play with me as if I was a doll, touching my skin, playing with my hair. "Please, please let me go," I begged her. She dropped her head to one side, with a bewildered look on her face. She was startled that I'd actually spoken to her. There are no words to describe how frightened I felt at this moment. I was so paralyzed with fear I could barely move a muscle. My body had become rigidly stiff and unobliging. All of a sudden I heard a voice that seemed to be calling out to this Bigfoot that had abducted me. "Nika! Nika! Noko lapita! Nika! Nika!" I realized someone was calling the Bigfoot, who was obviously named Nika. The female Bigfoot looked alarmed. She tried to remain quiet, indicating for me to do the same. She was behaving like a naughty, mischievous child that was scared of getting into trouble from her parents. It was then that I realized that this was my moment for rescue. I cried out at the top of my lungs, "Help me! Please help!" Seconds later, another female Bigfoot came charging over to where I was lying on the ground. Nika looked alarmed. The large female Bigfoot saw me with Nika. I realized at once she was Nika's mother. She gave the simple Bigfoot a big piece of her mind. The tone of her voice was belligerently angry. She was pointing at me and Nika, as if to say, "What have you done?" "Kilatilako! Hompati! Hakisakana tua! Hopolitana! Ikilipa! Hatolopo! Hakisakwa!" I promise you she sounded exactly like a furious mother who has lost her patience with her daughter, having been caught shoplifting. In this case, her daughter had shoplifted me from the beach. I had no idea what she was saying, because the language she was speaking to her daughter was not one I'd ever heard before. But this large female Bigfoot, whose head shape was perfectly normal, and who was clearly very emotionally intelligent, was not impressed with her daughter for abducting me. Nika hung her head in shame, looking sheepishly bashful. She knew she'd done a bad thing. Nika's mother was pointing accusingly at her, shaking her head. Nika did look ashamed, and said something to her mother, which I imagine was sorry. "I didn't mean to do it," kind of thing. What happened next startled me, because the mother Bigfoot, who was the same height as Nika, turned her attention to me, and this time when she spoke, her words became like English in my head. Although they weren't English, it was like she had spoken to me telepathically. "Kilatina po, hasikatala, okolosono po, hisatila sinasha, hakolosono." I'm sorry, Nika's not right in the head. She's got problems. She's grown up but has a mind of a child. She's very sorry for scaring you. I watched as the mother Bigfoot grabbed Nika by the hand. They both glided away. It took me a while to process what had happened to me, as I staggered back to my feet, running across the ribbon of beach to get home. And who should be sitting on the yoga mat, crying like a blubbering baby, but Jackie Bourdain herself. I stood there in bemusement, staring at her, and when she looked up at me, she said, "Oh my God, June! I'm so relieved to see you! You're all right! You're in one piece! I saw the Bigfoot running off with you. I was sure you were dead. She ran into my arms. We both lovingly embraced. And since that day, there has never been a bad word between the two of us. Me and Jackie have now become the very best of friends. I hasten to say, when I do my yoga exercises, I wait until it's full light, and Jackie always joins me. I enjoy living with her so much so, in fact, that Justin and I have moved into Jackie's place permanently. We couldn't envisage a better lives for ourselves, and my little boy Adam loves having his grandmother around. As for my encounter with the Bigfoots, it is something that me and Jackie have chosen to keep secret. Some things are best kept under wraps, after all. I'm glad to say these days Jackie has cast away her pretentious attitude. She's now doing little things that make life so much more special. She tells me that it has opened her eyes to what really matters in life.
Well, hello there. I hope you enjoyed the Omnibus edition. We've got many more coming our way for you to listen to. Sending you love wherever you are in the world, in North America, Canada, Kenya, wherever you may be. I send you lots and lots of love. Thank you for listening to my Omnibus, and I really do hope you enjoyed it, because that's the whole idea about it, is to give you some interesting stories to listen to. So until next time, goodbye and good night.